Luo Yinchen is quite an eccentric individual, frequently flirting with girls at school, and at times, he even spares no one, including his instructors. Luo Yinchen, you really have some audacity. Since entering university, you've been flirting with girls every day, and even the teachers are not exempt. I reckon you've charmed every girl in this school, his roommate teased him. Luo Yinchen held his forehead, a frown etched on his face, and lamented, honestly, I don't wish to do this. Whenever my condition flares up, I simply cannot help myself, and I don't quite understand why. Upon hearing this, his roommate could no longer contain himself. Good grief. The girlfriend I painstakingly found has been swayed away by your mere words. I haven't even sought retribution from you yet. Luo Yinchen could only offer an awkward smile. I'm sorry, ha? What's the situation now? Are you involved with those girls? Don't tell me you're juggling multiple relationships. His roommate interrogated sternly, pointing an accusatory finger at Luo Yinchen. In silence, Luo Yinchen opened his WeChat, revealing an overwhelming cascade of 99 unread messages. Presenting his phone to his roommate, he forced a bitter smile and said, as you can see, this is roughly the situation. His roommate, upon glancing at the screen, sank to his knees, weeping profusely, his heart shattered, lamenting, my girlfriend, whom I worked so hard to find, was snatched away by you, and you treat her poorly while juggling countless affairs. It hurts too much. Luo Yinchen, I swear I will kill you. Then his roommate sprang to his feet, raising his fist to strike Luo Yinchen. In a panic, Luo Yinchen dodged, repeatedly exclaiming, calm down, please. Who do you want? I'll give you her WeChat. His roommate, fist raised in a vow of love, wailed, it's too late. Everything is far too late. I am merely a clown defeated by you. My love cannot return, and she may already bear your child. Luo Yinchen hurriedly fled the dormitory, glancing back to declare, I assure you, nothing of that sort has occurred. His roommate hurled a phone at him, shouting, get lost. Luo Yinchen ruffled his disheveled hair, muttering complaints. It seems I'll have to find a place to stay again tonight, which means more expenses. So I should head to class and hope I don't relapse today. As he walked, numerous onlookers pointed and whispered upon seeing Luo Yinchen. Look, that's the notorious playboy. I remember he even flirted with his own teachers. Should we report this guy to the authorities? Though he is rather handsome, his character is utterly deplorable. You don't actually have feelings for him, do you? Impossible, he's just a damn scoundrel. What good is a pretty face? He's taken others' girlfriends. I certainly don't want to be mistreated by this jerk. Exactly. Faced with the crowd's scorn, Luo Yinchen donned a cap and silently made his way to class. Upon entering, the classroom, once filled with laughter and chatter, fell into an immediate hush at the sight of him. He's here. The wretched scoundrel has arrived. It's him again. Why hasn't he met his demise yet? How many innocent hearts has he deceived? I heard several attractive teachers have fallen for his tricks, and they've even shared hotel rooms. I've heard he visits hotels multiple times a day. It's likely he's played with every female student in the school, and some may even be pregnant. How utterly despicable. Liaolan from our class was deceived by this scoundrel. My goddess is so unfortunate. Luo Yinchen, may you meet an early end right here. Enduring the weight of their disdainful gazes, Luo Yinchen sighed and sought a secluded spot to sit. The moment he settled, many distanced themselves from him. Under immense pressure, he gazed out the window, attempting to shift his focus and relieve his mind. Luo Yinchen. A gentle, melodious voice reached his ears that he turned to find Liaolan, the belle of his class. She exuded a faint fragrance akin to roses, her fair arms adorned with a bracelet that Luo Yinchen had custom-made for her. Her skin was as pristine as ivory, her hair flowed like angelic feathers, and her eyes sparkled like obsidian, fixed intently upon him. Liaolan inquired, may I sit beside you? Luo Yinchen surveyed the surroundings, catching the envious and furious glares of his classmates, as if they were poised to tear him apart at any moment. Embarrassed, he smiled lightly. If you don't mind the atmosphere, please feel free. It's all right, the unpleasant environment cannot hinder my affection for you, Liaolan declared. Her gaze unwavering. Luo Yinchen could only smile in response. Ding, 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 the bell for class rang, announcing the start of English lessons. Luo Yinchen, please answer this question. The teacher appeared somewhat irked. Upon hearing his name, Luo Yinchen sprang to his feet, having been so absorbed in the scenery outside that he had not paid attention to the lesson. Teacher, that this he stammered, at a loss for words. This one, Lialan prompted quietly. Oh, it's that here, as it's a relative clause. Teacher. Luo Yinchen answered fluently, guided by her hint. The teacher pondered for a moment and said, stay behind after class. Luo Yinchen immediately sensed trouble. Oh no, here we go again. When the class concluded, Lialan bid farewell to Luo Yinchen. Luo Yinchen, I'll take my leave now, goodbye. Bye. He waved back a tea that moment. The English teacher approached, her eyes glistening with tears, looking at Luo Yinchen with a choked voice. This is too much. Just yesterday, you professed your everlasting love for me, and today, you're with someone else. Seeing the teacher in tears, Luo Yinchen felt an extraordinary transformation within him, suddenly appearing suave and composed. He gently cupped the tear-streaked face of the teacher, gazing deeply into her eyes. My dear teacher, I sincerely apologize for causing you to weep here. Though you witnessed an unfortunate scene, I assure you that my love remains unchanged. With a quivering voice, the English teacher replied, this is outrageous. You took my first kiss just yesterday. Luo Yinchen embraced her comfortingly, saying, teacher, a first kiss is merely a formality, while love is the ultimate testament. Let not today's events tarnish our emotions, shall we? The English teacher closed her eyes, then kissed me once more. As Luo Yinchen leaned in, poised to kiss her, the counselor suddenly appeared, interrupting. Luo Yinchen, come to my office at once. The English teacher shyly halted, clutching her necklace as she hastily departed. Luo Yinchen brushed his hair back and playfully winked at the counselor. Ah, my beloved counselor, what brings you here? The counselor covered her face, embarrassed, and replied, let's head to the office first. Inside the office, it was just the counselor and Luo Yinchen. The counselor returned a pair of earrings, sternly reprimanding him. These were gifted to you previously, and now I'm returning them. Are you aware that your antics have reached the principal's ears? This is quite serious. At this, Luo Yinchen regained his composure, his eyes reflecting newfound clarity. Rubbing his forehead, he chuckled ruefully, I apologize, counselor. Whenever my condition flares, I lose control. Despite my best efforts, it's simply beyond my ability. The counselor sighed. Even though the hospital provided a certificate, your actions will disrupt the academic environment. You just flirted with a teacher again, didn't you? Luo Yinchen lowered his head in contrition. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Fortunately, I'm married, otherwise, I might have fallen for your charms as well. Your lines are simply too persuasive. The counselor returned the precious earrings, fixing him with a stern gaze. Take these and be mindful in the future, otherwise, the school will have to take measures against you. Luo Yinchen bowed and nodded repeatedly. Understood. Understood. Leaving the office with the valuable earrings in hand, he noticed the sky outside had dimmed, night had quietly enveloped the land. Stars twinkling above, and the moon peeking through the clouds as if beckoning to the people below. Off to the hotel, I can't stay in the dormitory any longer. Exhausted, Luo Yinchen checked into a single room at the hotel. Every time my condition flares, I feel utterly drained, and my mind becomes sluggish. It's truly peculiar. Upon entering his room, Luo Yinchen collapsed onto the bed, slipping into slumber. Before this, everything had been so peaceful and serene, life proceeding as usual, until this fateful day arrived. As always, Luo Yinchen attended English class in the classroom. Don't you think the teacher seems a bit off today? Lialan alerted him from beside. The teacher stood at the podium, her face darkened, speaking to herself. Could it be because of me? Luo Yinchen pondered anxiously. At that moment, the teacher emitted an odd laughter. The previously boisterous classroom fell silent at this sound. A voice arose in inquiry. Teacher, even if something joyful has occurred, there's no need for such behavior. The teacher laughed again. The bizarre scene frightened several students. Teacher? The English teacher fixed her blood-red gaze upon Luo Yinchen, her voice sharp and piercing as she shouted, Luo Yinchen, Luo Yinchen, Luo Yinchen, I adore you so much. Why are you with other women? Why? Why? Everyone was taken aback, save for Luo Yinchen and Lialan, who remained remarkably composed. The teacher's joints began to contort and deform, grotesque pustules emerging on her body at a visibly alarming pace. followed by a torrent of dark blood spewing forth, startling the students in the front row into shrill screams. Luo Yincheng's eyes widened in horror, exclaiming, "What? What is happening?" The classroom descended into utter chaos. "Quick! Hurry! Notify someone to call 120. Alert the counselor. Blood! 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 What is going on? What is happening? Move quickly! Someone help! Support the teacher!" Amidst the panic, those overwhelmed by fear and nausea began to vomit, while the bolder students rushed to assist the teacher. In an instant, the room was filled with the stench of blood and vomit. Luo Yinchen, unable to bear it any longer, opened a window for ventilation, yet he could faintly hear chaotic sounds emanating from outside. After profusely spitting blood, the teacher's limbs elongated, her body appearing emaciated, with contorted joints that made her resemble a grotesque insect, coupled with the festering pustules, transforming her into a nightmarish zombie. "I love you! I love you! I love you!" The teacher muttered incessantly, but upon glancing at her students and Li Yalan, her tone shifted to a chilling, "I will kill you! I will kill you! I will kill you!" Then, she lunged at a nearby student, sinking her teeth into his neck, blood gushing forth from the severed artery. The already frenzied classroom became even more chaotic, with the student who had been assisting her frozen in shock. "What? What is happening?" Murder! Murder! Call the police! Call the police!" The teacher, after killing the student, began to devour him piece by piece, the sickening sounds of crunching bones and tearing flesh echoing throughout the classroom, blood splattering everywhere. "Hey! Hey! We should run!" one student shouted, witnessing the horrific scene as he slapped the shoulder of his companion. "Hey, what's wrong with you?" The latter, head bowed and trembling uncontrollably, muttered, "So terrifying, so terrifying, so terrifying." Then his joints too began to twist, followed by a violent expulsion of blood, transforming him into a similarly grotesque creature. What has happened to you?" While one teacher was biting students on stage, several classmates below also began to mutate. One of the transformed students lunged forward, ripping out another's intestines along with his head in a gruesome display. At last, the classroom was in complete disarray. "Help! Help me! Please, no! I don't want to die yet. Teacher, it's me, teacher. It hurts, it hurts. My leg is being eaten, my leg, save me, save me." While some cried for help, others were slowly being consumed by the abominable creatures. Luo Yinchen stood in shock as the teacher's gaze shifted towards him, her elongated limbs propelling her towards him. "Run!" Li Yalan shouted, grabbing his arm and pulling him outside. Monsters darted through the corridor, and numerous students fell prey to their vicious bites. Li Yalan and Luo Yinchen dodged and fled, dodging and fleeing. "We need to get out of here!" Li Yalan yelled. Luo Yinchen, snapping out of his daze, replied, "Right." Upon reaching the corridor exit, they found it blocked by several monsters. To the other side, this time, it was Luo Yinchen who pulled Li Yalan away in haste. At another exit, they encountered yet another swarm of monsters. Li Yalan, panting heavily, exclaimed, "There are monsters here too." Luo Yinchen began to think rapidly. This is the last exit. How frustrating! A loud explosion resonated as the English teacher burst through the thick wall. "I love you," she shrieked in an eerie voice as she charged towards them. Help!" Li Yalan cried in fear, clutching Luo Yinchen tightly. In that moment of embrace, Luo Yinchen felt a surge of warmth, his entire being transforming in an instant. "My princess, allow me to protect you," he declared, mustering immense strength, effortlessly lifting Li Yalan as he sprinted up the stairs. The monsters pursued relentlessly. Li Yalan felt her body weaken, burying her head in Luo Yinchen's chest, losing consciousness. "My little princess, rest for a while. I will handle everything from here." Luo Yinchen kissed her forehead and leaped onto the rooftop. From the rooftop, the city lay in ruins, engulfed in flames, with the sounds of gunfire, sirens, and monstrous roars echoing amidst the fleeing crowds. On the rooftop, Luo Yinchen found himself with no escape, the monsters closing in rapidly behind him. "I will eat you! I will eat you!" Gazing at the necklace swaying on the monster's chest, Luo Yinchen felt a pang of sorrow. "Teacher, I'm so sorry. I couldn't save you. Farewell." With that, Luo Yinchen leaped off the rooftop, carrying Li Yalan, landing on the roof of another building. He bid a silent farewell to the teacher-turned-monster before leaving the school behind. When Li Yalan awoke, she found herself in Luo Yinchen's home, with him sleeping beside her. Chapter 2. The Quest for Survival Supplies. Li Yalan switched on the television, where global news was broadcasting the current state of the world. Greetings to all our viewers. Today is the Lantern Festival, August 19, 4079. On this day, the world we inhabit has undergone a cataclysmic transformation. The once resplendent scenes of yesteryear have vanished without a trace. Regrettably, we now face an apocalypse of the biological realm. Experts have indicated that we are experiencing an invasion by a high-dimensional virus, with over 1 billion people currently infected worldwide. The infected exhibit violent and frenzied behavior, launching vicious attacks on any living being they encounter. Furthermore, they grow and evolve through the consumption of human flesh and environmental alterations. The military has resorted to nuclear strikes on cities that have fallen. Yet those who survived the tremendous blast waves now coexist with nuclear radiation, evolving into even more formidable creatures. A photograph aired on the screen, depicting a grotesque monster covered in shell-like skin, saturated with radioactive elements, with streams of lava coursing through the grooves of its hide. This is a witness's snapshot from the scene. The creature is impervious to blades and bullets. Even the mightiest nuclear weapons of humanity cannot vanquish it. All relevant experts have commenced research, hoping to secure a glimmer of hope for mankind. The broadcast transitioned to live experimental footage. Hello. What are your thoughts on this disaster? This viral invasion is unlike any we have witnessed before. Previous viruses were products of Earth, but this one is clearly not of terrestrial origin. This is a microscopic image. The virus lacks any cellular structure. It cannot even be classified as a virus. It is merely a point. Thus, it transcends our conventional understanding as a high-dimensional entity. Moreover, it can alter its dimensionality at will. It can be a point, a plane, a square, or even a distorted space. Do we possess any means to defeat it? The interviewed expert shook his head in resignation. The hope is bleak. Before the reporter could finish her sentence, the experimental subjects began to mutate, their faces contorting into spirals as they vomited blood, embarking on a gruesome rampage within the laboratory. The air was filled with incessant screams and wails, punctuated by the horrifying sound of flesh being torn apart. Finally, the entire scene faded to black. Upon concluding his words, Luo Yinchen picked up a glass from beside him and aimed it at the balcony outside, waiting for the opportune moment before hurling it with all his might. The glass shattered, producing a thunderous sound that attracted the attention of the monstrous entity. The enormous infected creature passed by the kitchen counter where Luo Yinchen and Li Yalan were hiding, exuding a foul stench that compelled both to cover their mouths and noses. After successfully creating an opening at the door, Luo Yinchen instructed Li Yalan to lead the way, following closely behind as they quietly maneuvered the supplies out of the entrance. Li Yalan took deep breaths, striving to suppress her mounting fear. Just as they reached the doorway, Li Yalan suddenly halted. "What's wrong?" Luo Yinchen asked, his gaze fixed intently on the creature behind them. Perplexed by her abrupt stop, Li Yalan, trembling, pointed towards the corridor outside. "There are so many infected hanging on the walls out there." Luo Yinchen quickly peered outside the door, exclaiming, "Damn! They've all gathered here," in a state of panic. He scanned the surroundings. "There's no other way. We can only—" Before he could finish his sentence, the infected by the balcony let out a piercing roar, and the creature outside swiftly crawled towards the noise. "Ah!" Li Yalan could no longer hold back and screamed, collapsing in fear on the ground. "Can you stand?" Luo Yinchen shouted. "No. I'm too scared. My legs are giving way." Li Yalan began to cry uncontrollably. "Damn it." As the infected on both sides lunged towards them, Luo Yinchen, in a moment of desperation, pulled Li Yalan close, successfully evading the onslaught. "Damn, damn, damn." The infected revealed their gaping maws, emitting a cacophony of bizarre sounds. "I want more, more, more. It feels so good, so good. I am handsome. I am handsome. I am handsome. I want women. I want women. I want women. Game. TV. Game. TV. Game. TV. Mommy. Daddy. I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry. I'm so hungry." Luo Yinchen, Li Yalan whimpered as she gazed at him. Luo Yinchen, contemplating the advancing creature, decided resolutely. "There's no other choice. I must entrust this to another version of myself. It's time to take a gamble." "What?" Before Li Yalan could comprehend the situation, Luo Yinchen leaned in and kissed her lips. Woo-woo, Luo Yinchen. Just as the creature approached from behind, ready to bite down, Luo Yinchen seized a kitchen knife from the ground and, with a swift motion, beheaded the monster. Luo Yinchen tossed his hair back, and the innocence in his eyes was replaced with confidence and brilliance, transforming him into an incredibly dashing figure. Hey, my baby. Promise me you'll stay put and not run off. I'll be back to get you soon. Luo Yinchen said, lifting Li Yalan's chin and gazing deeply into her eyes. With that, he brandished the knife, facing the remaining monsters outside. What has happened to him? Li Yalan wondered, astonished by the stark transformation in Luo Yinchen. With the knife in hand, Luo Yinchen fought fiercely against the monsters. The infected darted through the corridor with astonishing speed, their immense strength shattering several walls. Yet, Luo Yinchen merely smiled faintly, effortlessly dispatching them with a flick of his blade. Whether the monsters dove from above or leaped from the side to attack, Luo Yinchen evaded them with precision, severing their heads with ease. Witnessing this spectacle, Li Yalan recalled how he had once lifted her effortlessly, showcasing his newfound strength. The current Luo Yinchen was a far cry from the one she had known. He was powerful, charming, invincible, and undeniably flirtatious. After discarding the knife, Luo Yinchen shook his arms, declaring an end to the battle. Princess, your knight has vanquished all dangers. Now we can return to the castle with the supplies. He knelt before Li Yalan, lifting her into his arms. Hey, 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 Li Yalan exclaimed in surprise. The food. We still have food. Luo Yinchen kissed her gently. First, I will escort you back to the castle, and then I shall return for your dowry. Rest assured, my princess. Li Yalan felt a blush rise to her cheeks, embarrassed by the events that had just transpired. After safely returning Li Yalan to her room, Luo Yinchen blew her a kiss, saying, Wait for me, my little princess. Li Yalan lowered her head, her face flushed. Finally, when Luo Yinchen returned with the supplies, he collapsed onto the floor and fell asleep immediately. Li Yalan calmed herself, closed the door, covered him with a blanket, and began to inventory the supplies they had retrieved. Chapter 3. A new addition by Deadbeat. In the midst of his dreams, a slap jolted Luo Yinchen awake. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, he shouted, sitting up abruptly. Li Yalan, startled, asked, What happened? What happened? Upon realizing it was Li Yalan, Luo Yinchen bowed his head apologetically. I'm so sorry. Truly sorry. Li Yalan, baffled, replied, What did you do to make me upset? I didn't mean to attract so many girls. It was unintentional, truly, Luo Yinchen explained in a panic. The hospital even provided a certificate. It's a form of dissociative identity disorder, so I apologize. I'm very sorry. Li Yalan listened with rapt attention, casting him an envious glance. So that's how it is. You can become so powerful and handsome just by switching personalities. I don't even know how I got this condition. It's quite odd. Every time my body overheats, I feel as though I'm not myself, yet everything feels so real. Luo Yinchen noticed the towel in Li Yalan's hand and realized he was completely unclothed. Ah, where are my clothes? Could it be? He seized Li Yalan's arm in a panic. I didn't do anything to you last night, did I? If I did, I'll kill myself, or let you decide my fate. Li Yalan snapped back to reality and burst into laughter. No, you did nothing. I only wiped your sweat because you were drenched. Relieved, Luo Yinchen sighed. Thank goodness. I certainly hope I haven't committed any irreversible mistakes. Li Yalan tossed her hair, casting a flirtatious glance at Luo Yinchen, leaning in to whisper warm breath into his ear, causing him to recoil in surprise. The blanket covering Luo Yinchen slipped away, leaving him completely exposed before her. Li Yalan stared at him for a moment, arching her brow with a mischievous smile. She'll put it plainly, you're just an inexperienced boy who hasn't matured yet. Embarrassed by his exposure, Luo Yinchen blushed deeply and hastily pulled the blanket over himself. Li Yalan, stifling laughter, said, So the little virgin can blush too. Come on, darling, don't cover up. I haven't finished wiping you down. No need. Thank you. I can manage the rest myself. Luo Yinchen protested, trying to shield himself. Come on, don't be shy. I'm very gentle, she teased, her tone laced with seduction. No, really, no need. They engaged in a playful tussle, ending up awkwardly entangled on the floor. A sudden roar interrupted their playful banter. Shoo! Luo Yinchen warned Li Yalan seriously, signaling for silence. Furrowing her brows, Li Yalan defiantly reached toward him. Luo Yinchen quickly covered her mouth, nearly letting out a sound. Li Yalan pouted, glaring at him as if to say, "Let us see how long you can pretend to be mature." Once the noise subsided, Luo Yinchen complained, "What were you thinking? If I had made a sound just now, we would have been finished." Li Yalan feigned anger, turning her head away. "Humph. I don't care. I was helping you wipe your sweat, and you still tried to avoid me. Ugh. Just let me get dressed first." Luo Yinchen sighed, grabbing his clothes nearby. "Don't peek." Li Yalan raised her eyebrows in surprise, then smiled with a hint of mischief. "I already saw everything while you were sleeping, little virgin." Luo Yinchen, his face aflame, retorted, "Aren't you a virgin too? Don't talk about me." Her laughter held a sharp edge. "Oh? Why not let me see for myself to prove your claim?" Luo Yinchen replied playfully. Li Yalan threw the towel at his face, shouting, "Pervert! Rogue! Big pervert! Big rogue!" Luo Yinchen removed the towel and managed to get dressed. "You were the one who started it. Help! Help! Don't come near me!" Ah! A sudden cry reached their ears. They rushed to the window, peering outside to witness a little girl being chased by a massive infected creature, crying and shouting, "Daddy! Mommy! Help me!" Li Yalan looked at Luo Yinchen in shock. "Should we go save her?" Seeing the fleeing girl and the concern etched on Li Yalan's face, Luo Yinchen underwent a mental struggle before deciding, "Let us go. We must save her. We cannot just stand by and watch her die." Li Yalan smiled brightly. "Yes," with that, they grabbed suitable knives from the room and rushed outside. "By the way, how did you come by these knives?" Li Yalan inquired. "I and the knives I sharpened during my personality transformations were intended for my own self-defense." Li Yalan, upon seeing the blinding blade glinting in the light, complimented Luo Yinchen. "I never imagined you contemplated so much during your transformations. I am uncertain myself. Each time my personality shifts, my mind becomes exceptionally clear, allowing me to conceive thoughts I had never considered before." Along with heightened visual, olfactory, and auditory senses, Luo Yinchen began to breathe heavily. "Why is your stamina so weak? We've only descended a few floors," Li Yalan teased. "If it weren't for the broken elevator in this building, do you think I would want to lug around dozens of pounds of knives?" Luo Yinchen surveyed the corridor, which was now eerily empty. "Fortunately, during my last transformation, I had cleared this building, so there's nothing obstructing our path now." As Li Yalan watched Luo Yinchen sprint ahead, she keenly observed a revelation. It appeared that the transition to a second personality also significantly enhanced physical capabilities, albeit at the cost of exhaustion and subsequent slumber. "Perhaps we've arrived." Upon seeing the light, the two finally reached the ground floor. "This way," Luo Yinchen shouted to the fleeing little girl, urging her to run toward him. The girl, hearing his voice, altered her course and dashed towards him. As she drew nearer, they finally caught sight of the pursuer. A gaunt figure with elongated limbs, skin resembling desiccated bark, and a face that bore the horrific visage of a decaying old woman. Luo Yinchen contemplated the sharp blade in his hand. "This knife should be able to cut through." "Hey, wait!" Li Yalan could not stop him as he charged forward. After leaping past the little girl, he raised his knife and swung forcefully at the creature's face. The impact felt akin to striking reinforced concrete, sending a jolt of pain through his hand. "This is incredibly tough." He examined the knife. "Now marred with several nicks, there's no other option. I must divert its attention." "Luo Yinchen." Li Yalan had already reached the little girl, calling out to him. "You two head back. The noise here is too loud. It might have attracted other infected." Luo Yinchen shouted. Li Yalan assessed their surroundings, glancing back at Luo Yinchen, who was engaged with the monster. She felt like a burden, unable to assist. "All right, just be careful. I'll find something to help you," she exclaimed. "Leave the knife." After tossing the knife beside Luo Yinchen, Li Yalan ascended the stairs. Once the two had departed, Luo Yinchen began to run. Now that they were gone, "I can move freely here." He discarded the dull knife in his hand and seized another from the ground, sprinting backward. The infected creature, with its long limbs, covered ground at an alarming pace, quickly closing the distance. As Luo Yinchen reached the wall, he pivoted sharply, sliding beneath the creature's legs. "Thank goodness I've learned a few tricks. Otherwise, I would have been caught." He couldn't resist giving the monster the middle finger. Due to its long legs, the creature struggled to navigate the cluttered environment, having to clear obstacles 1 foot and 1 hand at a time, which greatly aided Luo Yinchen's escape. determined to evade the relentless pursuer. Luo Yinchen scoured the area for any terrain or items he could utilize. Running indefinitely is certainly not a viable strategy. Engaging in a battle of stamina with such a being is ludicrous. He noticed numerous cars in the parking lot and immediately devised a plan. He began sprinting toward the vehicles. With the monster hot on his trail, as he reached each car, he opened a fuel cap, while the monster obliterated and overturned the vehicles in its pursuit. Thus, they circled the parking lot, spilling gasoline and oil from every car. Now, only one final step remains. Luo Yinchen, panting heavily, clearly feeling the strain, realized he needed to cover the monster in gasoline as well. Moreover, gasoline evaporates quickly. I must act swiftly. He hurled the knife into the center and, as the monster advanced behind him, executed a sudden turn. Sliding beneath it once more, this time, he dashed toward the oil-soaked ground, retrieved the knife he had previously discarded, and leaped high. Astonishingly, Yalin, who was watching, he soared over the ground. When the monster came charging again, it slipped on the slick surface, tumbling and rolling, becoming coated in oil. I must hurry. Spotting a car battery, he seized the knife and began hacking at it. The creature stood, only to slip and fall repeatedly. After a few strikes, the battery ruptured, spewing smoke and igniting a blaze. Luo Yinchen kicked it into the pool of gasoline, igniting a roaring fire, while the creature continued to slide helplessly. However, the loud commotion attracted other infected. Seeing his plan succeed, Luo Yinchen immediately fled the scene. Once the smoke cleared, the infected had been reduced to a charred husk. I'm back, Luo Yinchen announced as he entered the room, covered in oil. All done. Impressive, right? Li Yalin, visibly worried, asked, Are you all right? Did you get hurt? Nope, just a bit of oil on me, Luo Yinchen replied, patting his chest. Let us take a hot shower while there is still power. Li Yalin fetched him a change of clothes. Aware that if the power went out, their phones would likely cease to function as well. Thank you, big brother. The little girl expressed her gratitude to Luo Yinchen. Not at all, by the way. When will you marry Xiaoman? The little girl's question left both of them astounded. Marry? Luo Yinchen? You've known her all along. You wouldn't even consider. Li Yalin's expression turned incredulous. Luo Yinchen assessed her with a scrutinizing gaze. You can't possibly be Li Xiaoman. Can you? That's right. Xiaoman was playing in the park when Big Brother found me. He said he would marry me when I grew up. The little girl beamed innocently. Li Yalin's brows furrowed, her eyes darkening like the night. Honestly, how many girls have you been involved with? Luo Yinchen opened his phone, glancing at his WeChat friends, scratching his head and grinning. If I had to count, I couldn't say for sure. It's been quite the accumulation over time. Li Yalin's brows shot up. Go take a shower. Okay. As Luo Yinchen stepped into the bathroom, Li Yalin turned to Li Xiaoman. Xiaoman? Can you tell me what Big Brother did after proposing to you? Li Xiaoman pouted. Big Brother only kissed me once and didn't he do anything else? Really just a kiss? Xiaoman guarantees it with Big Brother's personality. Li Yalin muttered under her breath, Lolita complex. This oil is so difficult to wash off. Luo Yinchen tried every shampoo and body wash, yet the oil stubbornly clung to him. What a subpar product. Unable to remove even oil, just then, the bathroom door swung open. Hi. Can't wash off the oil, huh? Let me help you. Li Yalin and Li Xiaoman rushed into the bathroom. What are you doing here? I am still washing, Luo Yinchen shouted in alarm. Li Yalin caressed his tone back, speaking in a soft, sweet voice. Isn't it okay for me to help you wash? As a lover, can't I do this much? If you're going to wash, at least wear something. Why are you both completely undressed? Luo Yinchen shut his eyes, unable to find a place to look, and Li Xiaoman was no better, Li Xiaoman exclaimed. As Big Brother's wife, it's only natural to give my all to my lover. All? Luo Yinchen looked at the giggling Li Yalin. You didn't teach her that, did you? What? Is there something wrong with that? Look at you, watching for so long, and you still haven't had enough? Li Yalin shot him a disdainful glance. Luo Yinchen covered his eyes again. I'm sorry. Li Yalin, grinning mischievously, jumped into the bathtub. I'm not listening to any of that. I am going to punish you. What is even more terrifying is that the mutated beings are not limited to humans. Even dogs, cats, and mice have transformed into horrifying forms, inheriting the characteristics of their original species. There is no other choice. We may have to leave this place in search of a new refuge. The number of infected creatures is rapidly increasing, and it won't be long before this area is overrun by these monsters. Luo Yinchen gazed out the window, contemplating the situation. Among the throng of infected below, one creature had climbed onto the rooftop across the street. It stood upright, rotating its head in a full 360 degrees, resembling a radar. Luo Yinchen's pupils quivered at this sight, bewildered by its actions. What is it doing? Suddenly, his phone vibrated violently, emitting a deafening sound. How could this happen? In a panic, Luo Yinchen hurled his phone to the ground, shattering it, and urgently warned Li Yalan. Quick, smash your phone. Li Yalan, who was preparing food, was startled by Luo Yinchen's frantic behavior. What is going on? Coincidentally, her phone also began to vibrate wildly in her pocket, producing a cacophony of ringing. How could it ring on its own? Li Yalan quickly handed her phone to Luo Yinchen, who promptly smashed it until the screen went dark. Rushing back to the window, Luo Yinchen instructed Li Yalan, pack the remaining food in your backpack. We might have to make a swift escape soon. Observing Luo Yinchen's perspiring anxiety, Li Yalan swiftly began gathering their belongings and pulled Li Xiaoman along. Should we open the door? She inquired, her heart racing. Luo Yinchen urged them to maintain silence. Sure. Controlling his erratic breathing, he took deep breaths while cautiously peering outside. If he wasn't mistaken, that creature had just been manipulating electronic devices. A quick glance revealed that the radar-like monster had vanished from the rooftop. How careless! He never anticipated they could evolve to such an extent. Luo Yinchen, Li Yalan clutched Li Xiaoman's hand tightly at the door. What's wrong? The rooftop seems to be trembling. Look at the chandelier. Li Yalan pointed at the trembling fixture on the ceiling. Luo Yinchen, observing the swaying chandelier and quaking ceiling, suddenly recalled. This building has 10 floors, while the one across has 13. My room is on the top floor, and that loud noise from earlier means Li Yalan. Open the door and prepare to flee. Luo Yinchen swallowed hard, a chill creeping up his spine. Li Yalan's eyes widened in alarm, cold sweat drenching her brow, her lips quivering. Open the door slowly, without making a sound. Following Luo Yinchen's instructions, Li Yalan cautiously opened the door, while Li Xiaoman fearfully clung to her hand. Let us go. They began to descend the stairs as directed by Luo Yinchen. At that moment, an eye rolled across the floor. Li Xiaoman, terrified, was about to scream when Li Yalan covered her mouth with her hand. Stay calm. Stay calm. Luo Yinchen urged, but something was amiss. Why was there an eye rolling towards them? He realized the implications. Could it be? Outside, the wind howled, and glancing towards the balcony, he caught a fleeting glimpse of the creature grinning at them. Its other eye missing from its face. Run? No, flee. Without hesitation, Luo Yinchen grabbed Li Yalan and Li Xiaoman, dashing downstairs. Have we been discovered? Li Yalan trembled. That phone was its doing. I was so careless. I forgot they could evolve. Luo Yinchen appeared frantic. We must leave this building before they block our escape. No sooner had he spoken than the sound of windows shattering and walls collapsing echoed behind them. Big brother. Behind us, Li Xiaoman shouted, pointing. Don't stop. Keep running. Luo Yinchen leapt down an entire flight of stairs, causing Li Yalan and the terrified Li Xiaoman to gasp. Wow, this is my first time jumping so many stairs at once, Li Yalan exclaimed as they ran. Behind them, numerous monsters relentlessly pursued, climbing the walls and crashing through obstacles in their path. The radar-like creature outside began transmitting information via electromagnetic waves, drawing a throng of infected towards the building. They amassed densely atop the structure. Luo Yinchen felt goosebumps rise on his skin. How could they gather so many in an instant? The infected surged like a relentless tide, crashing against the building like a merciless wave, causing the beams to crack and the structure to begin collapsing. Luo Yinchen, the building is about to fall, Li Yalan shouted, covering her mouth and nose as she surged forward with him. Don't stop. We almost out. Just before the monsters could block their exit, they successfully escaped the crumbling edifice. Li Yalan, however, began to slow down considerably. Luo Yinchen, I doubt I can hardly run anymore. Merely escaping was far from sufficient. They needed to find a new location to rest. Luo Yinchen grasped Li Yalan's hand, but she was already exhausted, collapsing to the ground. This was perilous. They were about to be caught, yet Li Yalan's complexion was pale. Her lips cracked, eyes bloodshot as she knelt, retching uncontrollably. The infected flailed their arms, mouths agape, rushing towards them like phantoms trampling the ground. There was no other choice. Luo Yinchen turned to Li Xiaoman. Xiaoman, I'm sorry. Big brother. Before he could finish, Luo Yinchen leaned in and kissed Li Xiaoman. Startled, she momentarily froze, thinking, even now, he was focused on her. After the kiss, Luo Yinchen gently tucked her hair behind her ear. No, my little darling. This is merely the prelude to the thrilling moments ahead. Huh. What is suddenly wrong with you, big brother? Li Xiaoman failed to comprehend such complex words. Li Yalan wiped her mouth. Luo Yinchen, you? Luo Yinchen lifted Li Yalan's chin, gazing firmly into her eyes. Why, little princess, do you want me to eliminate them all, or should I first escort you away from here? What are you talking about? Of course, we should run. Li Yalan was captivated by Luo Yinchen's charming gaze. At your command, my princess. With a playful kiss thrown in her direction, Luo Yinchen dashed off. Come back soon. Where are you going? Li Yalan called after him, but he was already far away. This was bad. The monsters were closing in, nearly face to face with Li Yalan. Luo Yinchen, Li Yalan cried out, clutching Li Xiaoman tightly. Where did you go? At that moment, a massive armored SUV roared onto the scene, sending the monsters that stood before them flying several meters. Just in time, Luo Yinchen called from the driver's seat, donning a pair of sunglasses. Without hesitation, Li Yalan yanked open the door, ushering Xiaoman inside, and successfully started the vehicle as they were pursued once more. Where did you get this car? And the sunglasses? Li Yalan exclaimed, her expression frozen in disbelief. Luo Yinchen flashed her a heart gesture. To ensure you both remain as beautiful as ever, I can accomplish anything. My little princess, how cheeky of you. Li Yalan turned her head towards the window. Yet the monsters continued their relentless pursuit, their elongated limbs allowing them to swiftly close the gap. Big brother, they're catching up. Li Xiaoman shouted. Fear not, little darling. Trust in your big brother's driving skills. Here we go. With a heavy foot on the accelerator, the speedometer soared to 160. Li Yalan clutched the handrail tightly, curling up in her seat. Aren't you worried about crashing at this speed? My princess, would you doubt your knight's ability to handle his steed? As the infected leapt from above, Luo Yinchen deftly maneuvered the wheel, dodging their attacks with remarkable steadiness. Big brother, there are monsters blocking the way ahead, Li Xiaoman pointed out. Before them stood a barricade of infected bodies, determined to halt the vehicle. Heh, piece of cake, Luo Yinchen declared without hesitation, flooring the gas pedal and propelling the car to nearly 200. You're not actually going to ram through it, are you? Li Yalan shut her eyes tightly as the infected loomed closer. Li Xiaoman also screamed, closing her eyes. With unyielding confidence, Luo Yinchen drove straight through the obstruction at 200, the vehicle shaking violently before quickly stabilizing, leaving dismembered infected in their wake. Now they were out of danger, successfully escaping the wave of infected throng. You can open your eyes now, my little darling and my little princess. Li Yalan blinked as they emerged onto a wide road. The radar-like infected left helplessly watching as Luo Yinchen drove away. Meanwhile, the vehicle itself only bore minor scratches on the hood. What kind of car is this, so resilient? Li Yalan inquired. A military-grade armored vehicle. It likely belonged to the nearby stranded troops, Luo Yinchen replied candidly. Li Yalan, puzzled, asked, how did you know there was a vehicle like this nearby? Luo Yinchen gazed at her intently. Why, princess? This is part of my secrets. It must remain undisclosed. Seeing he was unwilling to divulge further, Li Yalan decided not to press the issue. Fine. If you don't want to say, then so be it. I will always love you. Big brother, where are we going now? Li Xiaoman inquired, tapping Luo Yinchen. Supermarket. With that exclamation, Luo Yinchen drove towards the central market. After several hours on the road, they finally arrived. Ah, what a grand supermarket! Exclaimed Li Xiaoman joyfully upon exiting the vehicle. Once the car came to a halt, Luo Yinchen succumbed to a heavy slumber. Noticing his deep sleep, Li Yalan realized that she would have to navigate this vast supermarket on her own for the time being. Although fear gripped her heart, she continuously encouraged herself inwardly. She carefully lifted Luo Yinchen from the driver's seat and placed him in the back, covering him with a black cloth before locking the car door. With determination, she took Li Xiaoman by the hand and ventured into the supermarket. With their supplies lost during their escape, it was impossible to wait for him to wake up. She had to muster her courage and take the initiative. The power outage rendered the supermarket shrouded in darkness. One could hardly see a hand in front of their face. After swallowing hard and mentally preparing herself, Li Yalan stepped into the abyss. "Sister, I'm scared," Li Xiaoman whimpered, clinging tightly to her thigh from behind. "Don't be afraid. I'm here," Li Yalan reassured, though her own breath caught in her throat as she inhaled sharply. Without their phones or any source of light, they relied on the faint glimmers from outside to navigate. They first arrived at the electronics section, hoping to find a flashlight or a power bank. Amidst their search, Li Yalan stumbled upon a round object. Could it be a flashlight? She thought, her heart leaping with excitement, only to discover upon closer inspection that it was merely a stick. Her hopes dashed. Then she found a rectangular item, and upon feeling it, she noted the presence of a button. It was a phone. Holding the power button down, the screen illuminated. There was still battery. They had a source of light, however. Her brief moment of joy was abruptly interrupted by a piercing sound. Ah, 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 ah. Time to work. Time to work. Time to work. Time to work. Li Yalan quickly pulled Li Xiaoman behind a shelf. While not far from them, about 10 meters away, a creature with a severed leg was stumbling about. Blood streamed from its eyes, leaving a trail wherever it went, occasionally stopping to let out a chilling wail. Li Xiaoman whimpered. But Li Yalan swiftly covered her mouth. "Don't make a sound, or we will be done for." They crouched in silence, enduring the deafening cries that threatened to rupture their eardrums. Li Yalan kept a watchful eye on the creature's every move, battling her own fear. After what felt like an eternity, the limping creature finally wandered away, its shrieks fading into the distance. "All right, it's gone," she sighed with relief. But as she turned around, she was met with a pair of terrifying eyes. Both she and Li Xiaoman gasped in fright, inadvertently drawing the attention of the creature back to them. "Follow me." Upon closer inspection, they realized the figure was an elderly man, who seized Li Yalan's hand and began to flee deeper into the supermarket. They hid beneath a counter, and the man gestured for them to remain silent. Eventually, when the creature had once again departed, their racing hearts calmed. "Who are you?" Li Yalan inquired, eyeing the gaunt man before her. "Hello, beautiful. My name is Dan Whaley. I apologize for startling you earlier," he replied politely, though his grip on Li Yalan's hand remained firm. Li Yalan forcefully shook off his hand. The creature had already left. "So why did you appear behind us so suddenly?" Dan Whaley chuckled. "I merely wanted to alert you that it was safe to move. I had no idea you would scream." Li Yalan dusted off her clothes and took Li Xiaoman's hand. "Enough. We need to leave, however." Dan Whaley blocked their path. "What do you think you're doing?" Li Yalan instinctively took a few steps back, unnerved by his lecherous gaze. "Look, that creature is now blocking the only exit, and it's quite late outside. I happen to be part of a group here. We've gathered all the food in the supermarket. Why not stay the night and leave in the morning?" he suggested with a sinister grin. "Not happening," Li Yalan firmly rejected, tugging at Li Xiaoman as she attempted to leave. Dan Whaley raised a handgun, aiming it at them. "A gun?" Li Yalan exclaimed, her eyes widening in shock. Dan Whaley lit a cigarette and chuckled. "Today, you either come with me or you die at the hands of that creature. It's your choice." Li Yalan glanced around, spotting no tools to aid their escape. The creature had only just left, and the noise would surely attract it back. Under the threat of the gun, Li Yalan and Li Xiaoman reluctantly followed Dan Whaley to their makeshift safe haven within the supermarket. Chapter 5. The Human Condition in the Apocalypse. Dan called out a man armed with an assault rifle as they entered. Dan Whaley waved back. "Yes, I'm back, and I've brought 2 young ladies who found themselves in trouble here." The man scrutinized Li Yalan for a moment, a sly grin spreading across his face. Well, Dan always knows how to find the good stuff." Dan Whaley wiped his nose and responded courteously. "Hey, Lao Yu, keep a sharp lookout. When it's time to switch shifts, make sure to get some rest." The man nodded in agreement. As they stepped inside, Li Yalan observed her surroundings closely. They were in the underground storage of the supermarket, with the parking lot just beyond a wall. Guards were stationed at every entry point. Dan Whaley explained to Li Yalan, "I truly apologize for pointing the gun at you earlier. It was a desperate measure. It was pitch dark outside, and with the creatures roaming about, it was dangerous." He gestured toward the cameras and guards. "Look at how secure we are now. These are soldiers from the military, on duty 24 hours a day. All we need to do is survive this ordeal. With all the supplies in this supermarket, even if they run out, we have the means to venture out for more." He waved his gun for emphasis. Yet, Li Yalan remained wary of everyone there. They appeared friendly, but one does not offer help without expecting something in return. We're here. This is where the other survivors are, Dan Whaley announced as he unlocked a heavy iron door. Upon entering, Li Yalan and Li Xiaoman found themselves in a space housing approximately 20 individuals. Among them were men and women of various ages, from robust youths to frail girls, and even mothers with children. Alongside elderly people standing shoulder to shoulder, a few armed guards stood watch over the group. Li Yalan eyed the guards suspiciously and asked, "Why are there armed guards here? Are they prepared to kill us at any moment?" Dan Whaley smirked slyly. "Oh, come now, beautiful. You're overthinking it. You know, with the virus lurking, we can't be too careful. We must ensure no one suddenly turns and threatens us. Rest assured, I guarantee they won't harm anyone. The guns are not loaded unless absolutely necessary," Dan Whaley added with a half-smile. Despite his reassurances, Li Yalan's defenses remained firmly in place, her caution only heightened. She whispered to Li Xiaoman, "Wait for my signal, and we'll escape together. We must return to the older brother." "Sister, what about the older brother?" Li Xiaoman tugged at her sleeve. "He will come looking for us once he wakes up." "Don't worry, Xiaoman," Li Yalan assured, gently stroking her head. Just then, a girl of similar age approached them, her short hair and well-defined figure giving her a distinct presence, though her gait seemed somewhat unnatural. "Let me introduce myself. My name is Luo Yinchen, but you can just call me Luming." She gestured towards the group of women behind her, explaining that she had been assigned by Brother Qin Hai to specifically oversee the daily lives of women. Thus, if the two ladies had any needs they found difficult to express, they could confide in her, and she would find a way to address them. Luo Luming then crouched down to look at Li Xiaoman, asking, "Do you understand, little one?" Li Xiaoman, feeling somewhat put off by her, retreated to the back. "Haha, perhaps it's just that we are not yet acquainted, but you'll warm up to each other soon." Luo Luming did not press further. After exchanging pleasantries, she left, advising them to familiarize themselves with the others first, and to seek her out if they needed anything. Li Yalan, observing Luo Luming's departure, pondered something but remained uncertain. With no other choice, she decided to explore the surroundings. Grabbing Li Xiaoman's hand, she began searching for an escape route within the confines of the sealed warehouse. Along the way, the onlookers regarded her with scrutiny, as if she were a monster ready to devour them, their gazes filled with disdain and envy. Unable to endure the constant stares, Li Yalan found refuge behind a corner of a cargo container. "What is so fascinating about me?" she wondered. Did I guess it because of Li Xiaoman? She seated herself quietly with Xiaoman in a secluded spot, her brow furrowed. Sigh. After wandering around, I couldn't find any exit. Aside from those two doors, the walls are all solid concrete. Not even a breeze gets through. How on earth can we escape? And there are armed guards by the door. What a headache. As Li Yalan raked her fingers through her hair in distress, an elderly voice interrupted her thoughts. "Miss, could you spare some food?" The voice was feeble and parched, as though the speaker was struggling to clear their throat. Turning to the source, she saw a frail old man lying on the ground, his ribs starkly visible beneath a few tattered garments. Li Yalan reached into her pocket and handed him a packet of crunchy snacks. "I found this in the supermarket just now. I'm not sure if you can manage to chew it, but it's all I have." The old man beamed at her, snatching the snacks and devouring them voraciously, hardly bothering to chew before swallowing. "Sister, I want some too," Li Xiaoman said, her eyes glistening as she watched the old man relish the food. Thankfully, she had taken extra for herself, planning to share some with Luo Yinchen later. Li Yalan produced another pack for Xiaoman. "Thank you, sister," exclaimed Li Xiaoman, happily crunching away, the sound echoing in their quiet corner. "Young lady, I presume you were brought in by that man named Dan Whaley?" the elder remarked between bites. Li Yalan's eyes, glistening like polished obsidian, fixed on him. "Elder, what do you know?" she inquired. "From the moment I arrived, I sensed something was off with those people." The elderly man replied kindly, "It's best for young girls to leave this place. Here, you will find no dignity in survival." "What do you mean by that?" Li Yalan's pupils widened in surprise. "Tonight, late at night, you will see everything. Come back here to find me," he concluded, before lying down again. "Everyone, we are about to distribute supplies." Brother Qin Hai's voice rang out from outside. "Supplies. Let's go take a look." Li Yalan urged Li Xiaoman to follow her out. Qin Hai stood alongside Dan Whaley, who cheerfully announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your payment for today's labor." Inside, You will find daily necessities and food you will need for tomorrow. Please come forward under Qin Hai's direction to collect your share. The boy supplies are with me, while the ladies can collect theirs from Zhuo Luming. Qin Hai efficiently began distributing the provisions. Dan Weili, casting a glance over the crowd, spotted Li Yalan and Li Xiaoman at the back and called out, "Aren't these the newcomers? Ladies, your supplies are over here. Let me assist you." Upon hearing this, Li Yalan approached Dan Weili. Her curiosity piqued. "Where are the supplies you mentioned?" Dan Weili produced a large box filled with food and women's essentials. "As a token of welcome for you, the newcomers, consider this your gift. Be sure to handle it carefully." "It is quite heavy," he chuckled. Li Yalan accepted the box overflowing with newly packaged food and daily items, but refrained from expressing her gratitude. Meanwhile, others receiving their meager rations of biscuits and candies cast envious glances at Li Yalan. "Why does she get so much when she hasn't lifted a finger on her first day?" one muttered. "After slaving away all day, I barely got a fraction of what she has. It's clear her arrival only brings misfortune. We scarcely have enough food as it is, yet she is given so much." Another fumed, resentment brewing. Li Yalan was taken aback by the sudden onslaught of vitriol directed at her. Dan Weili clapped his hands to restore order. "All right, I understand your frustrations regarding her ample provisions, but we must take care of the newcomers. After all, they have endured hunger outside for far too long. It is only fair to assist them in regaining their strength. Right? With monsters roaming outside, we must stand united as a collective. I do not wish to witness discord within our ranks." He then motioned to Qin Hai. "I assure you, as long as everyone diligently fulfills their responsibilities, the supplies will not run short for anyone. Please rest assured." Afterward, Dan Weili gestured to Li Yalan as he departed. "Enjoy these provisions. Beautiful." Li Yalan felt her resolve wavering as she gazed at the heavy box of food. The hardship she had endured outside, coupled with her desperate need to survive, made it increasingly difficult to resist. Yet, the words of the elderly man echoed in her mind, steering her back to her principles. "Sister," Li Xiaoman tugged at her sleeve. "Xiaoman, now that we have food, let us find a place to eat," Li Yalan replied, returning to the secluded corner with her bounty. Zhuo Luming observed them intently. Li Yalan set the box down and offered a few loaves of bread to the elderly man. "Elder, did they not provide you with any supplies?" The old man took a piece of bread and bit into it. "What use is food to an old man who can do nothing? They have left me here to wither away in this corner. If it weren't for your kindness, my end would have come much sooner," he lamented, covering his legs with a few scraps of cardboard. Seeing him shrouded in despair, Li Yalan believed his words. "Never mind, let us eat something. If this is not enough, I have more," she offered, pushing some of the box towards him. Suddenly, hurried footsteps approached, and a woman yanked on Li Yalan's hair, startling both the elderly man and Li Xiaoman. "Sister," Li Xiaoman cried, attempting to intervene, but was kicked away, collapsing and spilling the food she had just eaten. "Xiaoman," Li Yalan shouted, trying to rise, but her hair was firmly grasped from behind. "You vile wretch, my child and I received none of that food. Why do you get so much? You think your youth gives you the right to trample on us." The woman's fury was palpable. Her face flushed with rage as she nearly seethed. "You filthy harlot!" Sharing with this old man, with a forceful tug, she began to pull Li Yalan's hair harder, and blood began to seep from her scalp. Li Yalan screamed in agony. The old man attempted to rise to her aid but found his limbs unresponsive. Zhuo Luming rushed over, grabbing "I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that." The soldier aimed his gun at Qin Hai and commanded, "You, go over there and see what is happening." Qin Hai walked in that direction, recalling only a deceased elderly man and a child. Upon reaching the corner, he found nothing but some toppled cardboard boxes and a fainted child. He waved to the soldier, saying, "There's nothing here. Perhaps the child just bumped into something." "The child bumped into something," the soldier retorted loudly. "Bring her over here, lest she stirs up more noise." Following the directive, Qin Hai carried Li Xiaoman as he left the corner. Just as the soldier was still fuming, a gaunt figure emerged from beneath the boxes. Hey, hey, look over there." A nearby soldier tapped his comrade. "What are you doing?" "I was sleeping." Upon seeing the scene, he was confronted by an infected being, which wore a malevolent smile. The creature, with its elongated legs, swiftly charged at the soldiers. "Ah, it's an infected being." "Infected!" The soldier hastily opened fire. the deafening gunshots alarming Lao Yu and Dan Whaley, who immediately ceased their tasks to investigate. Lao Yu shouted, "What is going on? Why did you suddenly start shooting?" When they pushed the door open and saw the infected being chewing slowly on a soldier's corpse, Lao Yu collapsed in terror, exclaiming, Monster! A monster!" Without even properly fastening his pants, Lao Yu bolted for the exit. Dan Whaley, equally frightened, wet himself and called out to Chin Hai, "Nephew! Uncle, I'm in excruciating pain. Help! Help my hand! Ah! It hurts so much! My foot too! Ah!" The infected tore his limbs apart, slowly ripping open his abdomen until the sound of his skull shattering marked his final breath. In the end, only 3 survivors remained. Li Yalan and her companions, still fleeing the supermarket under the guidance of Zhao Lu Ming. "Do you even know the way? I feel like we've gone in circles several times." Li Yalan complained to Zhao Lu Ming, panting heavily. "Be quiet. We're almost out. If it weren't for that horde of monsters blocking the door outside, I wouldn't be stuck wandering in here." Zhao Lu Ming felt her way through the surroundings, holding a map in her hand. "This is so unreliable. Let us find a place to rest. Following you up and down has exhausted me," Li Yalan said as she found a clean spot and sat down heavily. Zhao Lu Ming yanked her up. Hey, no. This group of monsters is particularly sensitive to scent, and with all the sweat you've produced, sitting down will surely attract them." "What?" Li Yalan shot her a sideways glance, a look of discontent on her face. "I wonder if Luo Yinchen is awake yet. I'm still waiting for him to rescue me." "Luo Yinchen?" Zhao Lu Ming's eyes widened upon hearing the name. "You know Luo Yinchen?" "Yes. What about you? Do you know him too?" Li Yalan asked, glancing at her. Zhao Lu Ming shyly covered her face. "Oh dear. There's quite a story to tell. It was that day in the supermarket when I was shopping. He specifically picked out a piece of clothing for me and said, Really?" Li Yalan glared at her fiercely. "So what's your relationship with him?" Zhao Lu Ming placed her hands on her hips and retorted. "And how did you get to know him?" "As for me," Li Yalan smirked with a hint of mischief, "I not only knew him earlier, but we also shared our first time together. He is now mine." Zhao Lu Ming's mouth fell open in disbelief. "Impossible. I remember he was particularly reserved. Every time I made a move, he intentionally avoided me. How could he be so casual with you?" Li Yalan pressed her lips together, finally bursting into laughter after holding it in for so long. "I think he just didn't want to be with you. Stop deceiving yourself, you." Zhao Lu Ming pouted, her face reddening as she turned to look at the map. "I'll find him and clarify everything myself." Upon seeing her reaction, Li Yalan smiled calmly. "Youth, sister, look over there." Li Xiaoman tugged at Li Yalan's sleeve, pointing to a corner far off in the parking lot. "Over there." Li Yalan squinted and stared for a moment. "What's there?" Zhao Lu Ming followed her gaze, squinting as well as they drew closer. A massive wave of infected appeared, baring their teeth and charging toward them. "Run!" Li Yalan quickly pulled Li Xiaoman back, and Zhao Lu Ming hurried to keep up. "This is all your fault for being directionally challenged. Look where you've led us," Li Yalan scolded Zhao Lu Ming. Zhao Lu Ming glanced back at the advancing infected, pushing herself to run faster. "You can't blame me for this. How was I to know they would block the underground parking lot?" "Enough! What now?" Zhao Lu Ming looked at the map while running. "It's over. There's nowhere left to run. This is the last exit. All the other escape routes are blocked." You useless fool. You've put us in a terrible situation." Li Yalan shouted at the top of her lungs. "Aha! Luo Yinchen, are you awake? You're not still sleeping, are you?" In the car, Luo Yinchen was sound asleep, dreaming of himself. "Kid, why are you still sleeping?" Luo Yinchen groggily rubbed his head. "Huh? Who? Me? Oh, I'm just taking a break because I'm unwell." The counterpart Luo Yinchen gave him a big thumbs down. "Still sleeping? The Wi-Fi brewed tea for is about to be eaten by the infected. Aren't you going to save her, wife? You? Infected?" Luo Yinchen suddenly understood. "So you are me, and I am you? Fool!" The counterpart Luo Yinchen kicked him, startling Luo Yinchen awake from his dream. He looked at the black blanket draped over him and the thousands of infected outside, chuckling. Hee, I must still be dreaming. Just a little more sleep." Just then, a tremendous tremor shook the ground, causing him to roll off his seat and land awkwardly. Suddenly, he sprang up, leaping from the car and charging through the infected, shouting, "Wait for me. I'll save you right away." With no escape in sight, Li Yalan and her companions found themselves on the rooftop of the supermarket, completely trapped. What kind of place is this? How did we end up on the rooftop? Are you planning to jump off? Li Yalan yelled at Zhao Luming. Zhao Luming, with a defiant expression, replied, "What else can we do? Jumping off and dying is better than being bitten to death." "You idiot! If this were a game, just wait and see how I'll curse your parents." Li Yalan pressed herself against the wall, crying in despair. "Ah, help! Is there anyone who can come to my rescue? I haven't even lost my virginity yet. I don't want to die like this." "Ah, you haven't lost it?" Zhao Luming gasped. "So you were just lying to me." Li Yalan gave her a disdainful look. "So what? We all going to die anyway." Li Xiaoman joined in, crying, "I don't want to die either. I haven't even married my big brother yet." "Ah, married?" Zhao Luming's eyes widened in disbelief. Unable to believe her ears. "What are you all talking about?" The infected had surrounded them, tongues lolling as they sprinted toward the trio, mouths agape, eager to kill. A tremendous explosion erupted, blowing a large hole in the supermarket rooftop, sending a multitude of infected tumbling down. Li Yalan, still sobbing, paused. What just happened? A grappling hook ascended, and with the sound of pulleys rolling, Luo Yinchen soared up the rope. "Ah, it's Big Brother." Li Xiaoman's face lit up with joy upon seeing Luo Yinchen. Li Yalan's heart sank completely. "You finally made it. I thought you were still asleep." "Ah ha ha. Your cries for help were quite loud. You really said everything." Luo Yinchen scratched his head awkwardly. "You heard everything?" Li Yalan's face flushed with embarrassment. Luo Yinchen gestured dismissively. "Not much, just a little." "A little of what?" "Virginity and such." "Ha ha." Luo Yinchen was too shy to reveal the rest. Li Yalan covered her face, her expression darkening. "Let this world perish. I'd rather die." "Ah, this?" Luo Yinchen was at a loss for what to do. "But Li Yalan, is your head all right? You've wrapped so many bandages around it." Li Yalan's eyes were hollow. "Let everything be destroyed," Zhao Luming reminded Luo Yinchen from the side. "We should escape first. We're 3 people here. Do you have a plan?" Luo Yinchen pointed at the grappling hook in his hand. "I've parked the car downstairs. To make it easier for you to land and run, I'll hold onto this rope and bring you down from the building. Once on the ground, you all hide, and I'll drive to pick you up." "All right. Then let us move quickly. That group of monsters is about to climb up the walls." Luo Yinchen looked back at the gaping hole. The infected were clawing their way up the vertical wall with their sturdy claws. "Li Yalan, I'll send you down first." Saying this, Luo Yinchen leaped from the rooftop, holding Li Yalan tightly. "Hold on to me." "Mm." Li Yalan shut her eyes tightly, clutching him in fear. Upon reaching the ground, he quickly released her, and the mechanical spring of the grappling hook shot back up. "All right, Li Xiaoman, come." Li Xiaoman stepped forward and embraced Luo Yinchen, leaping down in the same manner. Once on the ground, Li Yalan caught Li Xiaoman. "You all find a place to hide first. Wait for my car horn before coming out," Luo Yinchen instructed Li Yalan. "Okay, hurry." Pulling the button on his hand, the grappling hook yanked Luo Yinchen back to the rooftop. "Zhao Luming, you're the last. Come here." Luo Yinchen extended his hands toward Zhao Luming. Zhao Luming, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I didn't expect it to be you, my Prince Charming." Without hesitation, Zhao Luming leaned in and kissed Luo Yinchen. "Wait, this isn't the time for that." Luo Yinchen blushed and pulled Zhao Luming away. Zhao Luming sensually licked her lips. "I like it. Let us go." Before the infected could seize them, Luo Yinchen, in a last-ditch effort, leaped off the building with Zhao Luming in his arms. During the descent, Zhao Luming kept nibbling on Luo Yinchen's earlobe, nearly causing him to lose his grip. "Zhao Luming, what are you doing? This is dangerous," Luo Yinchen exclaimed shyly. Zhao Luming held him tightly. "As long as I can die with you, I'll be content." Li Yalan watched the two in the air, pouting. "Hey, what are those two doing?" Li Xiaoman chimed in. "Big Brother is too much. He should have taken Xiaoman along to play." Once on the ground, Luo Yinchen released Zhao Luming, saying, "You go find a place to hide first. I'll bring the car over and then come out." Zhao Luming kissed Luo Yinchen once more. "Okay, I'll wait for you." With a flushed face, Luo Yinchen flew away on the grappling hook. Zhao Luming ran to Li Yalan's side, not forgetting to cover her lips and cast a teasing glance at Li Yalan. Li Yalan clenched her fists, struggling to suppress her fury. As the number of infected beings increased, Luo Yinchen finally drove up in an armored vehicle. Upon arriving at the scene, he frantically honked the horn, urging Li Yalan and the others to flee to tea the same time. The infected creatures were drawn by the commotion, hastening toward them on all fours. Hurry, Luo Yinchen urged, his expression tense. Zhuo Luming was the first to dash out, unhesitatingly seizing the front passenger seat, leaving Li Yalan to fume as she squeezed into the back with Li Xiaoman. First come, first served, you understand? Zhuo Luming couldn't resist, taunting Li Yalan. Li Yalan shot her a fierce glare. Heh. Fine, buckle up, we're leaving. They managed to escape just before the infected beings caught up and surrounded them. After overcoming numerous obstacles, they reached the wide road. Li Yalan, sitting in the back, glanced at Zhuo Luming, puffing her cheeks in frustration, her hands incessantly tapping the seat. Zhuo Luming caught her reflection in the rearview mirror and grinned mischievously, quickly reaching her hand toward Luo Yinchen's lap. Startled, Luo Yinchen nearly lost control of the steering wheel, causing the vehicle to swerve wildly. Zhuo Luming, we're driving here. Please stop, Luo Yinchen pleaded. Li Yalan could no longer contain herself, shouting, What on earth are you two doing? There are two other people in the back. Could you show a little restraint? Luo Yinchen quickly apologized. Sorry. My bad. My bad. Zhuo Luming, with a mischievous grin, retorted. What's the matter? Are you jealous? I can touch him, but you can't. Li Yalan, incensed, replied through gritted teeth. Humph. I've touched him several times while giving him a bath. Oh? Luo Yinchen was taken aback. Really? Zhuo Luming raised an eyebrow, looking at Li Yalan. This prompted a playful scuffle between Li Yalan and Zhuo Luming. You're such a prude. As if you're any different. Luo Yinchen interjected, trying to mediate. Stop, stop, we're in a car. Save it for later. Both Zhuo Luming and Li Yalan chorused. Shut up and drive. Chapter 8. Family is never a choice, Yincheng. Yincheng, it's time to get up. The sun is shining bright, a gentle voice called to Luo Yincheng, who was lost in slumber. He poked his head out from under the covers. Mom, what delicious breakfast do we have today? His mother opened the window, and a gust of cold wind rushed in. I don't know. It seems like we're having a feast of northwestern winds for breakfast. Why open the window? Luo Yinchen buried his head back in the blankets. Mom, come on, just wake me when breakfast is ready. I'll get up and eat. I have to take your sister to school shortly. The meal is on the table. Just help yourself. His mother gently patted his blanket before leaving. Be careful on the way. Suddenly, Luo Yinchen sprang out of bed. Isn't Luo Yao already in high school? Do I still need to take her? After realizing this, Luo Yinchen found it impossible to return to sleep. He decided to get up, change his clothes, and sat down for breakfast. A glance at the table revealed a note. Yincheng, your dad is in the hospital and I might be busy taking care of him for most of the day. IVE left you some money. You can buy your lunch and dinner yourself. Love, Mom. Luo Yinchen stared at the note, bewildered. Mom, seriously, a text would suffice. What era are we in to still be using paper notes? Sighing, he thought, looks like I'll be ordering takeout alone today. After finishing breakfast, Luo Yinchen sprawled on the sofa, absorbed in his phone. He played all day until nightfall, when another message from his mother arrived. Yincheng, I'm quite busy and can't pick up Luo Yao. It's dangerous for a young girl to walk alone at night. Could you go get her? Upon reading the message, Luo Yinchen immediately canceled his takeout order, changed his clothes, and set out. All right, time to eat out today. With the heavy course load of high school, it was already 9 o'clock when school let out. Luo Yao packed her desk, preparing to walk home alone in the dark. Luo Yao, a familiar voice called out. Brother, what are you doing here? Luo Yao asked. Luo Yinchen showed her his phone. Mom seems to be at the hospital caring for Dad, so she won't be home tonight. It's not safe for you to walk alone. That's why I'm here. Luo Yao's eyes sparkled as she looked at him. Brother, I have the day off tomorrow, so shouldn't we do something fun tonight? Do something? Luo Yinchen frowned, his expression darkening, sensing something ominous. What do you want to do at this hour? Luo Yao placed her hands on her hips. The commemorative figures at the game center are on sale today. If we don't hurry, we'll miss out. Figures? Luo Yinchen quickly checked the calendar on his phone. Oh, right. Today's the day for the game center sale. I almost forgot. He praised Luo Yao. Not bad. You remember the date? Of course, Luo Yinchen followed up with, but you're in high school now. How are your grades? If they're poor, Mom will blame me for taking you to buy these. Luo Yao waved her hand dismissively. Oh. Come on. It's just a few grades. It's easy. I just happen to be first every time. First every time. Luo Yinchen raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Really? Absolutely. Luo Yao seemed to swell with pride. In that case, let us go, Luo Yinchen exclaimed joyfully. Long live my brother! Luo Yao echoed enthusiastically. Singing and dancing, Luo Yinchen and Luo Yao rushed to the game center, filled with various manga figures and game discs. Wow, this place is like paradise, Luo Yao exclaimed excitedly. Luo Yinchen's eyes immediately caught sight of a sparkling limited edition. That's it. The limited edition game released today. I can't believe they have it in stock. Luo Yao chimed in. I want it. I want it. The two dashed to the shelf, examining the glittering limited edition from every angle. Wow! Their attention was captivated by the game's packaging, but upon flipping it over, their expressions changed dramatically. Luo Yao, are you hungry today? Luo Yinchen asked, his voice trembling. I shouldn't be, Luo Yao replied hesitantly. Then, let's buy it. Agreed. Thus, Luo Yinchen and Luo Yao returned home with the game and most of the merchandise. Elated. Opening the door, they were greeted by darkness. It seemed their mother was still at the hospital caring for their father. Tonight, they could play without her supervision. Luo Yinchen was overjoyed, ready to leap. Luo Yao couldn't contain her excitement. Let us begin. Let us begin. They tossed their jackets aside and settled in front of the PS for an entire evening of gaming, completely oblivious to the ringing of their phones. As the night deepened, their stomachs began to rumble. Luo Yao, are you hungry now? Luo Yinchen asked, clutching his stomach. Luo Yao lay on the floor, looking pained. Of course. How could I not be? We've been gaming all night and haven't eaten anything. All right, let us order some takeout. As Luo Yinchen opened his phone to order, dozens of missed calls and unread messages from his mother popped up. Mom, why are you calling so late? Luo Yinchen wondered. Opening the message panel, upon reading the messages, a wave of panic washed over him, his breath hitching in his throat. What did Mom say that has you so shocked? Luo Yao leaned over to look. However, among his mother's messages was the devastating news of their father's passing. In a flurry, they hurriedly dressed and rushed to the hospital, where nurses were already preparing to take care of their father's body. Mom, when did this happen? Luo Yinchen asked, fighting back tears. Luo Yao stood quietly behind him, seemingly unfazed. Their mother replied, I'm so sorry, Yinchen. This is all too sudden for you. Reflecting on the fact that he had been joyfully playing games while they were away, a profound sense of guilt overwhelmed Luo Yinchen. Mom, I'm sorry, was all he could manage to say. Your father's hospital bills were exorbitant. There isn't much money left at home now. You and Luo Yao need to be cautious from now on, their mother concluded before departing. Thereafter, Luo Yinchen and Luo Yao never touched a game again, and their lives inevitably lost much of their joy. Luo Yao focused on her studies, while Luo Yinchen took on part-time jobs to support them. The vibrant Luo Yinchen turned gray in the wake of his father's death. Yinchen, do you know when all of this began? A voice in his dream inquired. Luo Yinchen merely stared blankly at the figure, faintly familiar, yet the silhouette felt so close. Did you think you were a normal person from the start? The familiar figure spoke again. The voice so recognizable. Luo Yinchen, I hope you can remain as happy in the future as you are today. These words were spoken in a haze, leaving Luo Yinchen utterly confused. Wait, what are you talking about? I don't understand. Hey! The figure grew more distant until it vanished from sight. Today marked the second day since their father's departure, and early in the morning, their mother was busy packing things. Mom, what are you doing? Luo Yinchen asked, perplexed. Yinchen, I think it's best if we don't see each other anymore. The words struck Luo Yinchen like a thunderbolt on a clear day. He was rendered speechless. Mom, what are you talking about? I can hardly comprehend this. Can we discuss it properly? Come, let us sit down and talk slowly. Yinchen, you are now in college, capable of living independently. You no longer require our care. His mother stared vacantly at the photo in her hand, which contained only 3 people. What are you saying? Luo Yinchen chuckled, not understanding why he laughed. As anxiety consumed him, in any case, it was a final farewell. I hope you can live well in the future. With that, his mother expressionlessly grabbed her luggage and exited through the door. It was only later that evening, amidst the haze of confusion, that he remembered he needed to pick up his sister from school. Right? Luo Yao would be finishing soon. He must go retrieve her. Luo Yinchen, too apathetic to change his shoes, made his way to the school. On the way, the news screens blared an alarming report about a mutation incident involving a deceased individual in a hospital, which had since been subdued by the police. Upon his arrival at the school, he stood at the entrance in a daze, anxiously scanning the throng of students for that familiar figure. However, as half an hour passed, the crowd dwindled, and the person he sought had yet to appear. A sense of foreboding washed over him. "Excuse me, are you Luo Yao's brother? I often see you coming to pick her up." A man in a suit addressed him. "What happened to Luo Yao?" Luo Yinchen asked nervously. "Nothing happened. Her mother just completed the formalities for her to leave school today." "You weren't aware?" The words sliced into Luo Yinchen's heart like a knife. His gaze dimmed entirely. "It's fine. Thank you, teacher." Dejected, Luo Yinchen returned home, collapsing hopelessly onto the sofa. He was bewildered as to what he had done to drive everyone away, and he could not fathom why his family, whom he had lived with for so long, had chosen to abandon him. He held his forehead, surveying the silent living room. What did I do to warrant such silence, to leave without a word? After a night steeped in anguish, the next morning, Luo Yinchen left this home with a smile, transitioning from living off campus to residing at the school. Just like that, he seemed to forget everything that had transpired. Becoming cheerful, flirting daily, oscillating between normal and abnormal, handsome and unremarkable. For a full 2 years. One day, he visited the hospital for a consultation. "Doctor, what is happening to me? I've been feeling quite strange lately, as if I'm not myself." The doctor, staring blankly at the chart, asked, "Have you experienced any significant psychological trauma in the past?" "Yes, there were some issues at home," Luo Yinchen replied, his head bowed in despair. "It sounds like a psychological disorder stemming from that trauma. In your case, even a psychologist may not be able to help. It depends on when you manage to overcome it." Luo Yinchen's eyes widened. "A mental illness? Does that mean I need to go to a psychiatric hospital?" The doctor quickly reassured him. "No, you're not at that level yet. You can still live a normal life. It's merely a minor disruption." "Is there really no other way?" Luo Yinchen pondered the report in disbelief. "Perhaps you could try confronting the person responsible for your condition. Overcoming that psychological hurdle might lead to improvement." The doctor handed him the report. "If you need psychological counseling, feel free to come back anytime." "Thank you." After expressing his gratitude, Luo Yinchen left the hospital, sighing, "Now I find myself switching roles to flirt with various girls. It has made my life quite unbearable." "Yinchen, Yinchen." A voice jolted him from his reverie. "Focus on driving. Why are you daydreaming?" "Oh, my apologies. It's my fault." Luo Yinchen quickly apologized. Li Yalan tapped his head lightly. "You're always just saying sorry. Can't you say something else?" "Haha, sorry." Li Yalan wore an exasperated expression. "Oh well, don't mind her. I like you just the way you are, Yinchen." Zhuo Luming consoled Luo Yinchen from the side. Luo Yinchen forced a smile. "It's really nothing. I don't care." Zhuo Luming placed her hand on his thigh. "But I care. If I hurt my beloved's feelings, that's quite serious." "Hey, fox spirit." Li Yalan cursed from behind. Zhuo Luming snorted disdainfully. "I should have told Luo Yinchen not to save you. It would have been better if you had perished there." Li Yalan reached out to pinch Zhuo Luming's cheeks. "Ah, is this jealousy from a side character towards the main heroine?" Zhuo Luming spoke with a tone full of arrogance. "Ha!" Li Yalan and Zhuo Luming began to tussle. "Damn big-chested virgin. What do you know? This is a symbol of feminine beauty." Zhuo Luming confidently displayed her impressive figure before Li Yalan. Blocking her view entirely, Li Yalan grabbed at her, using all her strength. "I swear I'll find a knife to chop you up." Zhuo Luming shrugged off her hand. "The jealousy of poor girls is fierce. Since you lack it, you want to take from others. Who wants your 2 lumps? I doubt you can even walk steadily." "I can walk steadily and look better doing it than you." You. What about me? Do you want me to share the secret of how I grew?" Zhuo Luming teased with a laugh. Li Yalan's face flushed with anger as she lunged forward. "Today, I'll kill you." Li Yalan charged at the driving Luo Yinchen, nearly causing the car to topple into a ditch. "Everyone, calm down. Let us talk this over." Luo Yinchen intervened. "Get lost. It's still your fault for being so fickle and chasing after other women." They both shouted in unison, leaving Luo Yinchen speechless. Chapter 9. Another one arrives from the very beginning. An unconscious voice whispered to Luo Yinchen that he was not truly their family, nor their biological child. He was merely a grand experiment. Luo Yinchen did not comprehend the meaning behind this, only realizing that he must survive. It must be said that after Luo Yinchen's breakdown, his driving skills were not to be underestimated. He managed to park the car steadily at the hospital entrance while the others, including himself, slept. The post-apocalyptic hospital was eerily silent, reminiscent of scenes from zombie apocalypse films. Nurse, nurse, nurse. A creature resembling a withered branch lingered at the entrance. Still clad in ragged patient clothing, emitting a hoarse sound. Luo Yinchen's heart lurched at the sight of the creature at the hospital entrance, its tattered hospital gown flapping in the cold wind as if it had been torn apart by countless claws. The creature's growls echoed like rusty gears struggling to turn, each sound piercing Luo Yinchen's eardrums, sending chills down his spine. "What on earth is that?" he murmured softly, instinctively gripping the car door handle. The companions beside him remained asleep, their steady breaths contrasting sharply with the oppressive silence surrounding them. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Luo Yinchen attempted to dismiss the intrusive thoughts that clawed at him. "You are merely an experiment. In this apocalypse, no one cares about your life or death." He shook his head vigorously to clear his mind. Now is not the time for self-pity. Cautiously, he pushed the car door open, trying to make as little noise as possible. The moment he stepped onto the ground, a wave of putrid odor assaulted him, reminiscent of countless corpses fermenting in the heat, nearly making him retch. Suppressing his discomfort, Luo Yinchen drew a makeshift short knife from his waist. One of his few remaining defenses in this desolate world. The creature seemed to sense his presence, slowly turning its body, its hollow eye sockets fixated on Luo Yinchen. A chill ran down his spine as he noticed the creature's eyes held no glimmer of life. Only an endless void, and hungered it let out a roar, dragging its stiff legs towards him. Though its speed was slow, the relentless ferocity it displayed was terrifying. Luo Yinchen sidestepped, easily evading the creature's attack. He observed that its movements were sluggish and awkward, full of openings. Seizing the moment while the creature turned, he lunged forward, plunging the knife into its neck. The creature emitted a muffled roar, its body convulsing violently as its hands flailed wildly. Attempting to grasp something, Luo Yinchen quickly retreated, keeping a wary eye on it. After a moment, the creature finally collapsed, stirring up a cloud of dust. He exhaled in relief, wiping the cold sweat from his forehead. Just then, a languid voice called out from behind him. "Oh, quite impressive." Luo Yinchen turned to see a tall woman leaning against the car door, her eyes still heavy with sleep. Her name was Su Yao, and she had been observing since they arrived. She was carefree but possessed an extraordinary calmness and intelligence. "Wait, the others." Luo Yinchen sheathed his knife, sensing something was amiss in this location. "Everyone, wake up and be cautious." Su Yao stretched lazily, shaking Li Yalan and the other three who were still asleep. "You all need to wake up. If you don't, you'll end up as the creature's dinner point one by one." They stirred awake, gazing at the desolate, crumbling hospital with serious expressions. "Is this truly a hospital? It feels more like a haunted house. We should go inside and take a look. Perhaps we can find some medical supplies." Luo Yinchen took the lead as he approached the hospital's entrance. The doors were ajar, creaking ominously in the wind, as if they were recounting the horrifying tales that had transpired within these walls. Upon entering the dimly lit lobby, the atmosphere was thick with the acrid scent of disinfectant mingled with the metallic tang of blood, rendering visibility nearly impossible. "Be cautious. There may still be those monsters lurking here." Luo Yinchen whispered, "By the way, who are you? Why have you been following us since earlier?" Li Yalan glared at Su Yao, her eyes burning with suspicion. Su Yao raised an eyebrow, a defiant smile gracing her lips. "Who I am is of little consequence. What truly matters is that, like you, I wish to survive in this apocalyptic world. Wouldn't it be better to have some company?" Li Yalan was about to press further when Luo Yinchen raised a hand, silencing her. "Let us not dwell on that now. Our immediate priority is to locate supplies and a safe haven." Li Yalan's expression was one of jealousy, her heart heavy with unspoken emotions. The group fanned out cautiously, advancing with trepidation. Suddenly, faint footsteps echoed from the corridor's end, prompting them to halt, their nerves taut. Luo Yinchen gestured for silence, urging everyone to conceal themselves. As the footsteps grew closer, a figure slowly emerged into view. To their astonishment, it was a disheveled man, very much alive. Don't come any closer," he shouted in terror, his voice trembling with fear. Luo Yinchen gradually lowered his weapon, attempting to soften his tone. "Do not be afraid. We are not monsters, merely survivors in search of supplies." The man's fear subsided slightly, though he remained wary. From his account, They learned that the hospital had become a disaster zone at the onset of the apocalypse. A peculiar virus, as if imbued with life, ravaged through the air, transforming people into creatures driven solely by bloodlust and insatiable hunger. The man had taken refuge in a hidden storage room, clinging to the meager remnants of food and water to survive until now. "Are there any usable medicines left here?" Luo Yinchen inquired urgently. After a moment of contemplation, the man pointed upstairs. The pharmacy on the top floor. There should still be some supplies, but his complexion paled. "The monsters there are the most numerous. I have heard countless terrifying roars emanating from that direction." Luo Yinchen inhaled deeply, exchanging glances with his companions. "Perhaps you should stay here while I investigate alone." Although Li Yalan and the others were eager to accompany him, they hesitated, fearful of the grotesque creatures. Just as they wavered, Su Yao stepped forward. "I'll go with you." "Wait." Li Yalan stammered, unable to voice her concerns. "Fine. You all stay here while I go with her," Luo Yinchen decided, as Su Yao turned back to give Li Yalan a cheeky grin. Frustrated, Li Yalan stomped her foot, exclaiming, "Why do girls always gravitate towards him?" Zwaluming, observing Li Yalan's comical expression, couldn't he help but chuckle, feeling a pang of envy at her charm. Luo Yinchen and Su Yao ascended the staircase cautiously, each step taken with utmost care to avoid alerting the lurking monsters. The stairwell was permeated with a nauseating stench of decay intertwined with the remnants of blood, inducing a wave of nausea. The flickering emergency lights overhead cast an eerie glow, heightening the sense of foreboding in the already sinister environment. "What secrets do these monsters conceal? Why have so many suddenly transformed?" Su Yao asked in a hushed voice, her gaze darting around them. Luo Yinchen shook his head. "I do not know, but I have a feeling that the truth behind this is far more complex than we can fathom." He gripped his dagger tightly, beads of cold sweat forming on his palm, at last. They reached the top floor. Luo Yinchen pushed the stairway door open. A wave of rancid odor assaulted them. Far more pungent than what they had encountered before. In the dim light, they beheld several monstrous corpses littered across the corridor, alongside some grotesque figures writhing and emitting spine-chilling growls. "Be careful." Luo Yinchen suddenly yanked Su Yao behind him, just as a massive creature lunged from the shadows. Its claws poised to strike, towering over them at twice their height. The monster reeked of a revolting stench, its hollow eyes devoid of life, and green slime oozing from its mouth. Its long claws scraped against the ground with a grating sound. Luo Yinchen sidestepped, evading the creature's attack, and swiftly charged forward, plunging his dagger into its chest. The monster roared in fury, swatting him back several paces. Seizing the moment, Su Yao lunged from the side. Aiming her dagger at the creature's neck, in the ensuing chaos, Luo Yinchen realized that this monster possessed greater strength and speed than any they had previously encountered, and it seemed to exhibit a modicum of intelligence. Evading their strikes, the two found themselves in a dire predicament, both sustaining injuries. "We can't continue like this. We need a strategy to divert its attention," Su Yao gasped. Luo Yinchen scanned the surroundings, spotting a partially ajar door at the corridor's end that appeared to lead to a room. Inspiration struck him. "You distract it, and I'll lure it into that room. Then we can devise a plan to confront it." Su Yao nodded and shouted, "Hey, ugly monster, look over here," as she charged toward the creature, brandishing her dagger. Infuriated by her provocation, the monster roared and turned toward her. Luo Yinchen seized the opportunity to slip behind the creature and sprint toward the door. Realizing Luo Yinchen was attempting to escape, the monster abandoned Su Yao and pivoted to pursue him. Luo Yinchen dashed into the room, discovering it filled with an array of medical equipment and supplies. Elated, he sought a favorable position, only to notice several more creatures rising sluggishly in the room's corner. "Not good," Luo Yinchen thought, as the monster barreled in behind him, blocking his escape route. He tightened his grip on the dagger, preparing for a desperate fight. Just then, Su Yao burst into the room, wielding a fire extinguisher she had found. She unleashed a torrent of foam at the monster. The white powder quickly engulfed the room, momentarily blinding the creatures and slowing their movements. Seizing the moment, Luo Yinchen and Su Yao launched their assault, daggers flashing as they fought through the throng of monsters, blood and flesh scattering in their wake. After an arduous battle, they finally vanquished all the creatures within the room. Exhausted, they collapsed onto the floor, panting heavily, their bodies smeared with the monster's blood and slime. After catching their breath, they began scouring the room for medicines. Soon, they unearthed several boxes of precious supplies, sufficient to sustain them for a while. Now we can return with our findings, Su Yao said with a smile, her face reflecting a mix of fatigue and satisfaction. Luo Yinchen nodded, about to speak when a cacophony of fierce fighting and shouting erupted from below. His expression shifted to alarm. This is bad. Something has gone awry downstairs. Grabbing the medical supplies, the two rushed toward the staircase. Chapter 10. The hospital encounter. What they initially thought to be a mere commotion turned out to be utterly jaw-dropping upon descending. My physique simply surpasses yours. Look at your unimpressive form. Zhuo Luming taunted Li Yalan, who seethed with rage at her words. I told you long ago that I would eventually cut off your flabby bits to feed the dogs. What are you doing? Stop tugging at my clothes. Li Xiaoman sat quietly nearby, counting the stones on the ground. Luo Yinchen handed the medical supplies to Su Yao and stepped forward to intervene between the two girls. However, the furious girls were as fierce as tigers. The moment Luo Yinchen approached, he found himself used as a human shield. Zhuo Luming pulled Luo Yinchen in front of her, shouting into his ear. Tell me of the two of us, who do you like more? Li Yalan chimed in, tugging him closer. I've known him far longer. What do you think you are? Even so. Zhuo Luming flaunted her assets provocatively before Li Yalan. I'll squeeze you to death. Li Yalan's eyes blazed with fury. Without clarifying the situation, she clutched Luo Yinchen's neck. Luo Yinchen's face flushed crimson, his arms flailing helplessly in the air. Resembling a floundering chick as he cried out, Help! I can't take this anymore. His piercing scream startled the birds perched nearby. Seeing this, Zhuo Luming draped herself over Luo Yinchen, her legs swinging as she pressed her chest against his back, playfully declaring, if you don't answer me, I want to get off, and you'll suffocate. Before he could catch his breath, Li Yalan, unwilling to concede, seized Luo Yinchen's arm and yanked him toward her with such force that it felt as though she might dislocate it. If you dare say you like her today, I'll twist your arm off and use it as a ball. Luo Yinchen felt like a rubber band stretched to its limits, nearly on the verge of snapping. His clothes were askew, the collar wide open, exposing an expanse of his chest, while his hair was a disheveled mess, resembling a bird's nest. Just then, Li Xiaoman ambled over, tilting her head innocently as she remarked, Stop fighting. If you keep tugging at Big Brother's clothes, they'll fall off. Zhuo Luming grinned at Luo Yinchen, and in a moment of imbalance, she stumbled, causing both of them to crash to the ground in a rather compromising position. Li Yalan's eyes widened like copper bells as she rushed over, intending to pull Zhuo Luming away, shouting, You vixen! I have truly had enough of you. Luo Yinchen lay on the ground, on the verge of tears, thinking to himself, Oh dear, I almost met my great-grandmother. This peacemaker role is truly unbearable. After dragging Zhuo Luming up, Li Yalan cast a sidelong glance at Su Yao, finally voicing a question that had long been buried in her heart. You were so close with that person named Su Yao at the beginning. Could it be that you were just flirting around? Luo Yinchen, uncertain of how many people he had flirted with during his episodes, could only respond vaguely, perhaps. I can't quite recall. Can't recall. Can't recall. Can't recall. Li Yalan once again shook him vigorously. I don't know her, and she hasn't flirted with me. We just met. Upon hearing Su Yao's words, Li Yalan let out a sigh of relief. Is that so? Thank goodness, I thought another one of her little lovers had arrived. Wait. Li Yalan suddenly realized why this guy had such good fortune with women. Was it too excessive? Luo Yinchen, while desperately trying to plead with her, explained, It's a coincidence. It's merely a coincidence. You can't take it seriously. By the time Li Yalan calmed down, Luo Yinchen had already caught a glimpse of half a great-grandmother. Zhuo Luming's face also showed discomfort. Her small mouth puffed up in indignation. Then why are you so intimate with him? You must know that in this apocalyptic world, casually engaging with an unfamiliar person is extremely perilous. Su Yao scoffed. Isn't it better to find a man to rely on in this apocalypse? Perhaps it even satisfies some personal desires. Upon hearing this, Li Yalan could no longer remain seated, grabbing the recently regained breath of Luo Yinchen and scolding him. Can you please get rid of that male charm of yours? I truly can't help it, Luo Yinchen replied, his tone slowing as if he were about to perish. Su Yao shrugged her hands. Well, it is what it is. The commotion of the group stirred the monsters lurking deep within the hospital, their hoarse cries causing an immediate halt to their chatter. They're coming. As soon as the words left her lips, the ragged figure had already vanished without a trace. Run! Su Yao was the first to react, sensing the sound was alarmingly close, almost at her back. The group dashed chaotically toward the hospital exit, with Luo Yinchen being pulled along by both Li Yalan and Zhuo Luming, stumbling like a puppet on strings. As he ran, he shouted, "Slow down! Slow down! My arm is going to break. It's going to break." Yet the two girls were wholly focused on the monsters behind them, utterly disregarding his cries. Li Xiaoman, however, dashed ahead with light steps, her small figure weaving left and right, not forgetting to shout back, "Big brother and big sister, hurry up, or we'll be caught." Her innocent voice echoed through the eerie hospital corridor, adding an inexplicable sense of tension. Su Yao led the way, her eyes vigilantly scanning the surroundings. Suddenly, she noticed that the path ahead was blocked by a pile of debris and called back, "This way is blocked. We need to find another route." The group came to an urgent stop, and in the midst of this chaos, Li Yalan and Zhuo Luming began to bicker once more. "It's all your fault. If you hadn't argued with me just now, would we be in such a predicament?" Li Yalan glared at Zhuo Luming, panting heavily. Zhuo Luming retorted defiantly, "And you think you have the right to complain? If you hadn't been so temperamental, would those monsters have been disturbed?" Luo Yinchen, caught in the middle, sighed helplessly. Just as he was about to mediate, the roar of the monsters grew ever closer. He anxiously exclaimed, "Stop arguing. We need to think of a way to escape first." At that moment, Li Xiaoman spotted an inconspicuous little room nearby. She dashed over, pushed the door, and exclaimed in delight, "The door is locked. Let us hide in there." Without a moment to spare, everyone surged into the room, carefully closing the door behind them, not daring to breathe too loudly. The room was filled with a stale odor of old medicine, and various medical equipment and clutter surrounded them in the dim light. Luo Yinchen noticed a dilapidated hospital bed in the corner. Collapsing onto it, gasping for breath, Li Yalan and Zhuo Luming found their own spots to sit, and although they ceased their quarrel, they remained stony-faced toward each other, creating an awkward atmosphere. Su Yao stood by the door, her ear pressed against it, listening intently to the sounds outside. After a while, she breathed a sigh of relief, saying, "It seems like they haven't followed us for the time being." Just as everyone believed they were safe for the moment, a strange sound suddenly emanated from a corner of the room. Luo Yinchen's heart lurched, forcing himself to stand, picking up a nearby iron rod, and cautiously approached the source of the noise. As he neared the corner, illuminated by the faint light, he saw a shadow huddled there, occasionally emitting whimpering sounds. Chapter 11. Escape from the hospital. Su Yao gathered her courage and slowly approached the source of the sound. From a distance, it resembled a child, and as she drew closer, she squinted in the dim light to discern its features. Her grip on the iron rod trembled slightly as, illuminated by the moonlight filtering through the window, she recognized the creature crouched behind the disinfection cabinet. A little girl adorned in a floral dress, her strawberry hairpin smeared with dark blood, her neck grotesquely twisted at a 180-degree angle and swollen, worm-like veins protruding beneath her decaying skin. It's a mutated creature." Su Yao suddenly whispered, "It's a child. She is also mutated. Retreat." Before she could finish her warning, the little monster abruptly opened its mouth, split to the ears, revealing rows of shark-like sharp teeth glimmering menacingly. The smooth pebble in Li Xiaoman's arms dropped with a thud as she stared at the embroidered letters on the monster's skirt, her pupils dilating in horror. This was a child nearly the same age as her. "Be careful." Zhuo Luming's scream coincided with the monster's growl. The mutated creature lunged at Luo Yinchen like a darting spider, its deformed claws tearing through the fabric of his shirt, leaving 3 bloody scratches on his collarbone. Li Yalan seized the stand. He grasped the deformed iron door frame with one hand, his wrist bulging with veins as he exerted a sudden force, effortlessly tearing down the entire 3-meter-high blast door as if it were mere parchment. With a firm grip, he hurled the door panel outward, the spinning metallic slab transforming instantly into a crimson meat grinder. 5 grotesque creatures, clinging to the ceiling, were cleaved in half, their dark green fluids splattering against the walls in a radiating totemic pattern. "To the left!" Li Xiaoman suddenly screamed. Before her words had fully escaped her lips, Luo Yinchen had already materialized at her side, with his left hand clamping down on the creature's jaw and his right hand gripping its tailbone. His arm muscles contracted with the force of a hydraulic press. Amidst the sickening sound of cracking bones, he managed to fold the 3-meter-long aberration into a V shape. The support column. Su Yao suddenly pointed towards the southeast corner. Luo Yinchen nodded in understanding, launching a kick that sent a charging canine creature flying, and as he leapt, he seized a dangling fire hose. With arms like iron chains, he yanked on the hose, violently extracting the entire cast-iron water supply system from the wall. As the water burst forth like a silver dragon breaking through barriers, Luo Yinchen swung the hose like a whistling steel whip. The whip's tip, propelled by high-pressure water, struck the concrete column, producing a brittle crack as the rebar snapped, intertwining with the monster's wails to create a symphony of death. The third-floor ceiling began to tilt. Tons of rubble entombing over 20 aberrations beneath the debris. "Darling, take the northwest passage," he shouted amidst the cacophony of collapsing structures, his blood-stained white coat flapping in the wind as he passed by Su Yao. He suddenly bent down, his bloodied fingers brushing against her lips. This taste is far sweeter than a strawberry hairpin. Zwaluming suddenly tugged at his collar. "Watch your head." 3 mantis-armed aberrations burst through the window. Luo Yinchen leaned back with the force of being pulled, his core erupting with astonishing torque, his right leg slicing through the air like a battle axe in a half-circle. The air erupted in a vaporous sonic boom as 3 mangled bodies embedded themselves into the wall. "Still maintaining their slashing stances. 5 minutes, he muttered, wiping a speck of blood from his face, the fragrance of jasmine entwined with Su Yao's hair twirling around his fingers. That should be enough to lure the obstetric monsters to the surgical ward. The bloodied scalpel danced at his fingertips, its gleam reflecting the multitude of crimson eyes outside the window. As soon as he reached the vehicle, Luo Yinchen collapsed, utterly exhausted. "Why is this happening now?" Li Yalan complained loudly. "Let me drive. I can handle it." Placing Luo Yinchen in the back seat, Su Yao took the driver's position. Just as the monsters closed in, they successfully started the car and fled the scene. Chapter 12. Encountering the survivor base, the vehicle sped along the bumpy road, the roars of the pursuing monsters gradually fading into the distance, leaving the interior enveloped in silence. Su Yao firmly gripped the steering wheel. Her gaze intensely focused ahead, occasionally glancing at the unconscious Luo Yinchen in the rearview mirror. Zwaluming and Li Xiaoman leaned against each other, their faces still pale, while Li Yalan slumped in the passenger seat, panting heavily. "Why do you keep sighing?" Li Yalan shot a glance at the back seat, questioning why the two were sitting together again. Su Yao, not fully grasping the meaning, could only awkwardly chuckle. "Ha ha him. Don't laugh. Don't think I'll let you off because you laughed." It felt like a declaration of war in a harem for the emperor. After an indeterminate time, a building surrounded by high walls emerged ahead, its perimeter lined with sharp wooden stakes and patrolled by armed guards. Su Yao slowed the vehicle, cautiously approaching the entrance. The guards noticed them immediately, aiming their weapons at the car. "Halt! Who are you?" A voice boomed from a loudspeaker. Su Yao rolled down the window and shouted, "We are survivors, seeking refuge." The guards exchanged glances, then one of them spoke into a walkie-talkie. Moments later, the gate creaked open, and Su Yao carefully drove inside. Upon entering the camp, they were met with a bustling scene of people, some clad in tattered clothing, others in tactical vests wielding firearms. A portly man approached amidst a throng, wearing a smug smile. "Welcome to our camp. I am the leader here. Everyone calls me Fat Brother," he announced. Su Yao and the others exited the vehicle, expressing their gratitude to Fat Brother. His gaze swept across them before settling on Luo Yinchen. "What happened to him?" Fat Brother inquired. "He fought with the monsters and is now exhausted, still unconscious," Su Yao replied. Fat Brother nodded, then instructed those around him, "Take him to the medical area. The rest of you, follow me, and I'll arrange accommodations." Under Fat Brother's guidance, they arrived at a row of makeshift houses. "This will be your home from now on. The conditions aren't great, but at least it offers shelter from the elements," Fat Brother explained. "However, there are no free lunches here. Each of you must contribute to the camp in exchange for food and lodging." Li Yalan felt nauseated just looking at him, directly opposing the idea of entering. Su Yao urged, "It's so dangerous outside." "Yinchen, no. Luo Yinchen is still unconscious. We should take it one step at a time." Li Yalan glanced worriedly at the back seat. "All right, but I hope he is someone we can trust." Su Yao and the others acknowledged their understanding. After Fat Brother relayed some guidelines, he departed with his subordinates. Once settled, Su Yao and Zhuo Luming visited the medical area to check on Luo Yinchen. The doctor reassured them that he was merely fatigued and would recover with rest. The two finally felt relieved. That evening, in the camp's cafeteria, Su Yao and the others received simple meals. The surrounding patrons whispered amongst themselves, their eyes betraying wariness and unease. I can't shake off the feeling that something's off here. Zhuo Luming confided to Su Yao in a hushed tone. Su Yao nodded. I share that sentiment. Fat brother doesn't seem like an ordinary person. Just then, a mercenary approached, his gaze lecherously roaming over Su Yao and Zhuo Luming, a smirk gracing his lips. Ladies, how are you finding this place? If you need anything, don't hesitate to seek my assistance. The mercenary offered. Su Yao frowned, coldly replying, no, thank you. The mercenary, however, showed no intention of leaving, continuing, in this apocalypse, it's rare to encounter such beautiful women. Why not stay with me? I guarantee you a comfortable life. Fuming, Zhuo Luming stood up. Please show some respect. The mercenary suddenly reached for Zhuo Luming's arm, and Su Yao immediately sprang up, shoving him away. What do you think you're doing? Su Yao exclaimed angrily. All eyes turned towards them, yet no one stepped forward to help. Enraged, the mercenary drew a knife from his waist, pointing it at Su Yao and Zhuo Luming. You two filthy bitches, don't push your luck. No one here dares to refuse me, he snarled at that moment. A voice rang out from the crowd. Let them go. Everyone turned to see a young man approaching. He was slender yet exuded a sense of determination. Zhang Feng, mind your own business, the mercenary sneered, his expression shifting slightly at the sight of the newcomer. This isn't a trivial matter. You can't bully them, Zhang Feng stated firmly. The mercenary scoffed. What, you want to oppose me? Zhang Feng stood his ground. Locking eyes with the mercenary, if you continue this way, I will report you to Fat Brother. Upon hearing Fat Brother's name, the mercenary's face darkened. He shot Zhang Feng a glare, then glanced at Su Yao and Zhuo Luming before sheathing his knife and grumbling as he walked away. Su Yao and Zhuo Luming expressed their gratitude to Zhang Feng. He smiled. No need to thank me. We should all help each other here. However, you should remain cautious. There are all kinds of people in this camp. Su Yao nodded. Thank you for the warning. Could you tell us more about this place? We're new and not well informed. Zhang Feng surveyed the surroundings before speaking softly. On the surface, this camp appears to be a sanctuary for survivors. But in reality, Fat Brother and those mercenaries are the true rulers here. They oppress the civilians and pillage resources. As long as you have enough goods, you can do as you please here. Su Yao and Zhuo Luming were taken aback, shocked to learn that this seemingly safe camp harbored such darkness. Then why don't you resist? Zhuo Luming asked. Zhang Feng let out a bitter laugh. Resist? We are unarmed. How could we fight back? Moreover, Fat Brother has many formidable mercenaries. We are no match for them. Su Yao clenched her fists. Are we just going to let them bully us? Zhang Feng shook his head helplessly. For now, there is no alternative. We must endure. However, some are secretly plotting, and perhaps there will be an opportunity for change in the future. From that day on, Su Yao and the others remained vigilant within the camp. When Luo Yinchen awoke, Su Yao recounted the situation to him. He seemed indifferent, responding, then that certainly adds some spice to life. Huh? What are you saying? Li Yalan playfully tapped his head, reminiscent of striking a wooden fish. Have you been unconscious for too long and want me to teach you a lesson? Zhuo Luming teased, lifting Luo Yinchen's chin. Ready to lean in for a kiss, Li Yalan hurriedly intervened. What are you doing? What are you doing? In the midst of their playful scuffle, Li Xiaoman seized the opportunity to plant a kiss on Luo Yinchen's cheek. Don't worry, big brother. With my loving kiss, you'll recover in no time. Haha, thank you, Li Xiaoman. Aha, Xiaoman. You actually stole my kiss. Su Yao shouted loudly. Meanwhile, Li Yalan and Zhuo Luming were still tugging at each other. One day, Su Yao overheard a conversation between Fat Brother and several mercenaries near the camp's warehouse. Recently, supplies have been dwindling. Those civilians are consuming too much. We need to come up with a solution, Fat Brother said. Why not just drive those useless civilians away? That would save a substantial amount of resources, one mercenary proposed. In a way, if we drive them out, we will lose our labor force, Fat Brother replied. I have an idea. Given the increasing number of monsters outside, we can organize the civilians to go out and gather supplies. This way, we can reduce resource consumption and have them work for us. If they encounter danger, losing a few civilians won't matter. Fat Brother, you are truly brilliant. The mercenaries flattered him. Su Yao was taken aback by what she heard. She hurried back to her quarters to inform Luo Yinchen and the others of the conversation. What should we do? Should we go along or run away in advance? Swaluming said anxiously. At that moment, Luo Yinchen interjected. I'm hungry. Is there anything to eat? Huh. Li Yalan produced a bag of bread, and Luo Yinchen eagerly devoured it. Eat less. This is our own food supply. That stingy fat brother's meager offerings are simply insufficient. And no worries. I can find more. Luo Yinchen flashed a thumbs up. Just then, a petite girl walked in. Chapter 13. Betrayal. The petite girl stood in the doorway against the light, her chestnut hair curling softly in the sunlight. Clutching a bundle of bandages, she timidly looked up, causing Luo Yinchen to drop the bread onto the concrete floor with a thud. Yinchen Sr.? The girl's trembling voice pierced the still air like a needle. She staggered forward, causing the medical gauze to scatter across the ground. Its really you? That day it was pouring rain. And you said you would pick stars for me. Wait. Li Yalan suddenly slammed her hand down, the wooden stool scraping loudly against the floor. She stepped forward to block Luo Yinchen, her black boots crushing half a piece of bread. Miss, our senior can hardly remember his own name. Are you sure you haven't mistaken him for someone else? Swaluming leisurely rolled up her sleeves, revealing gruesome scars on her forearms. Last month, he flirted with a cashier at the gas station. The month before that, he wrote love poems to a nurse in the air raid shelter. And the month before that. With each statement, she stepped closer to Luo Yinchen until their noses nearly touched. And now he's picking stars on a rainy day. Where did all those incidents come from? Also, how did your arms suddenly acquire these scars? A gust of wind swept through the medical tent, causing Su Yao to tremble slightly as she picked up the bandages. Li Xiaoman suddenly slammed a water bottle onto the table. Big brother said only to eat the cookies I baked. The girl was cornered by 4 menacing gazes and suddenly pulled a silver chain from her collar. The moonstone pendant emitted a ghostly blue glow in the dim light. Senior said this was made from meteorite fragments. It can summon. It can summon a meteor shower, right? Su Yao couldn't help but chuckle, pulling out a matching pendant from her pocket. The last time he saved me, he said this was the 5-colored stone used by Nuwa to mend the sky. She flicked her finger, and a silver chain slipped from Li Yalan's neck, the pendant refracting rainbow colors in the candlelight. Luo Yinchen's throat bobbed, cold sweat trickling down the back of his neck. Suddenly, a ripping sound came from the medical bed. Zwaluming had torn open his shirt with her bare hands, 7 or 8 uniquely styled necklaces clattering to the ground, each gem shining with different colors in the dim tint. Ha ha ha, just confess how many innocent girls you flirted with, 4 voices chimed in unison. Outside the tent, a flurry of footsteps approached, and Fat Brother's greasy laughter echoed closer. Lao Di Luo is awake? Just in time. We need to organize a rescue team tomorrow. The moment the thick canvas flap was lifted, everyone froze in place. Luo Yinchen was disheveled against the headboard, while 4 girls were tugging at his collar. Necklaces and hair in various positions. The girl holding the bandages suddenly turned to block Fat Brother's view. See, Captain. They are just disinfecting wounds. She waved the gauze around in a fluster. Please come back in 10 minutes. As the flap fell again, Luo Yinchen gazed at the girl, catching a glimpse of a crescent-shaped scar on her nape. Memories struck like thunder, and the images of that rainy night became vividly clear. The girl being torn by a pack of mutated wolves. His hand getting cut by sharp teeth as he pried open a beast's mouth, and that thoughtless promise of picking stars for her once the rain stopped, by Xiaozi. His hesitant call made the girl tremble. Recalling her as part of the nursing department from Medical University District 3. But what about the wolf pack? This was likely another girl ensnared in one of Luo Yinchen's schemes during his episodes. Senior still remembers. As she turned, tears streamed down her face like broken pearls, but she choked back sobs upon seeing the 20 or so necklaces hanging around Luo Yinchen's neck. At that moment, silence enveloped the tent, broken only by the distant cries of mutated crows outside the camp walls. 5 gazes pinned him to the wall like dissection knives. Just met and already heartbroken. By Xiaozi couldn't bear the heartbreak and collapsed. Fortunately caught by Su Yao. Fat Brother burst in at that moment. Since you are newcomers, I wanted to personally explain about tomorrow's mission to gather supplies. Considering there are many delicate girls among you, I would like Lao Di Luo to accompany us tomorrow. Only Luo Yinchen? What about us? Fat Brother quickly clarified. Oh, please remain calm. We will be handling heavy objects. Not to mention that in case of danger, you girls would run slower, and you wouldn't be able to help much. This reasoning had some merit, and in order to avoid causing unnecessary trouble for the group, Luo Yinchen readily agreed. Haha, Lao Di Luo is agreeable. We can gather at a place with more people tomorrow. With that, Fat Brother left. Xu Yao expressed her concern. Yincheng, it's too dangerous. Are you really going? What if I don't go? How can you not? We could just run away on our own. We don't need help from here at all. Li Yalan stomped her foot. I've long wanted to leave this place. Bai Xiaozi chimed in. I want to go with you. Seeing their enthusiasm, Luo Yincheng could only explain. Let us take it step by step tomorrow. Don't worry, I want to encounter danger. But, trust me, hee. Seeing the confidence on Luo Yincheng's face. They had no choice but to believe him, especially since everyone here was armed and wouldn't dare to act recklessly. The next morning, before dawn, Luo Yincheng rose to gather his equipment, preparing to set off with Fat Brother's team. He glanced at the several girls still sound asleep and quietly exited the tent in the center of the camp. Fat Brother was directing a group of mercenaries as they organized weapons and vehicles. Upon seeing Luo Yincheng approach, he greeted him with a broad smile. Lao Di Luo, we've been waiting for you. This time, we'll be relying on your strength. Luo Yincheng nodded slightly, unsure of why he said that. But as his gaze swept over the surrounding men, a sense of unease crept into his heart. Once the team set out, Fat Brother and the mercenaries chatted and laughed along the way. But the topic soon turned to distasteful remarks about the women in the camp. Upon reaching their destination, an abandoned large shopping mall, everyone cautiously entered, a foul stench pervading the air. While searching for supplies, Luo Yincheng noticed that Fat Brother and several mercenaries seemed to be deliberately stalling, as if they were not in a hurry to complete the task. Moreover, their eyes wandered around the ruins, seemingly searching for something. After loading several trucks with supplies, suddenly, a monstrous roar echoed, and a horde of mutated creatures surged from all directions. The mercenaries immediately raised their guns and began firing, and Luo Yincheng quickly joined the fray. Bullets struck the monsters' tough exteriors as if merely tickling them. However, just as the battle intensified, Fat Brother suddenly shouted, "Retreat! We are no match for them." Everyone panicked and ran towards the vehicles, but Luo Yincheng noticed that a few mercenaries were intentionally slowing their pace, seemingly waiting for something. Chapter 14. Escape and Death. As bullets whizzed past his ears, Luo Yincheng suddenly saw the trajectory of the bullets. They were not aimed at the monsters, but at the fleeing comrades. Get down! He pulled a nearby person, who was frozen in fear, and rolled beneath a steel shelf. Sparks flew as bullets struck the metallic structure, and blood mixed with brain matter splattered onto the rusted metal panels. The screams abruptly ceased. Luo Yincheng held his breath, watching a mercenary 5 meters away grin maliciously into his earpiece. Got it? Everyone retreat. Through the gaps in the shelves, he saw the mutated creatures suddenly halt their pursuit. As though bound by invisible chains, drooling as they circled aimlessly, showing no interest in the corpses on the ground. The mercenaries quickly fled the scene. Hurry! The person beside Luo Yincheng pulled him into a ventilation duct. They will smell the blood from my wound. The cramped metal pipe echoed with the sound of arthropods scuttling across the floor. I remember you were brought in by that group of girls. Right? You know them? Hello, my name is Zhang Feng. I spoke to them a bit while you were unconscious. Before he could ask the question swirling in his mind, a dull thud sounded from the end of the duct. A grotesque creature, bearing a human face and spider-like legs, had evidently caught up with them. Its body struggled to advance through the cramped confines of the duct, each wriggle causing the structure to tremble violently. This is bad. It's closing in. Zhang Feng gritted his teeth, fumbling ahead until he found an access panel, which he forcefully pushed open. The two slid down the duct, landing in a dimly lit room that resembled a changing area. No sooner had they hit the ground than the creature emitted a piercing shriek from behind, accompanied by the deafening sound of the duct being crushed and deformed. The dark chamber was cluttered with old, neglected items, exuding a pungent odor. Zhang Feng's anxiety surged as he scanned the surroundings, his gaze landing on a massive wooden wardrobe in the corner, its doors ajar. Quick, hide inside, he whispered urgently, pulling Luo Yincheng towards the wardrobe. As they squeezed inside and gently closed the door, the human-faced spider creature crashed through the ventilation duct and into the room. Its 6 pairs of compound eyes glimmered with a terrifying red light in the darkness, constantly swiveling as it emitted a hissing sound, reminiscent of a curse from the depths of hell. Inside the wardrobe, Luo Yinchen and Zhang Feng pressed tightly against one another, barely daring to breathe. Luo Yinchen's heart raced violently in his chest, each beat echoing like a drum. He could even feel Zhang Feng's equally rapid heartbeat. The creature prowled around the room, its appendages clattering against the surrounding debris, producing unnerving noises. Suddenly, it halted in front of the wardrobe, a putrid stench of decaying flesh seeping through the cracks of the doors. Luo Yinchen and Zhang Feng froze, scarcely daring to inhale the tea that moment. Luo Yinchen accidentally stepped on a metallic object, producing a loud clatter that rang through the silent room. The creature instantly became agitated, furiously scratching at the wardrobe doors with its massive limbs. Splinters flying. It's over. We've been discovered, Luo Yinchen thought in despair. However, just as the situation seemed dire, Zhang Feng suddenly noticed a hidden compartment at the base of the wardrobe. With a forceful push, it swung open. Without a moment's hesitation, they curled up and squeezed into the compartment. Almost simultaneously, the wardrobe doors were completely torn off. The creature stormed inside, only to find it empty. It spun frantically within the wardrobe, slamming its body against the walls in a fit of rage. Luo Yinchen and Zhang Feng remained silent in the compartment, their breaths shallow as sweat dripped from their foreheads. Time seemed to freeze. After what felt like an eternity, the creature finally ceased its rampage, letting out a reluctant hiss before slowly departing the room. The two waited in the compartment for what felt like ages, ensuring there was no further commotion outside, before cautiously emerging. They surveyed the disheveled room, a wave of relief washing over them for having survived. This way, Zhang Feng pointed toward the safety exit indicator at the end of the corridor. The bandage on his arm was already soaked with blood, trailing a broken line of crimson in the dim emergency lighting. Just as Luo Yinchen was about to step forward, an icy sensation prickled the nape of his neck. Out of the corner of his eye, he noticed the vent slats vibrating subtly, a viscous crawling sound spreading along the metallic duct. He abruptly grabbed Zhang Feng by the collar. Wait! It was already too late. The green light of the exit flickered, transforming into a blood-red hue, and a piercing alarm echoed through the corridor. The iron door 20 meters away slammed shut with a crash, shaking loose plaster from the walls. Behind them, the sound of dislocated bones cracking emerged, and three hunched, crawling abominations emerged from behind the fire hydrant, dripping viscous slime that corroded the floor. We've been set up. Zhang Feng stumbled against the wall, realization dawning upon him. They're treating us like lab specimens. His pupils dilated as he noticed the storage cabinet doors on either side of the corridor flinging open, revealing several corpses hanging with employee badges. Rising stiffly like puppets, from their decayed vocal cords emerged a mechanical voice, synthesized and devoid of warmth. Welcome to your arrival, specimens. Luo Yinchen seized a fire axe from the corner and cleaved into Ti Suyao clutched herself tightly. Her body racked with uncontrollable tremors. She gazed at Li Xiaoman, her heart heavy with guilt. She yearned to protect the child, yet in this frenzied world, she found herself utterly powerless. Li Xiaoman's cries gradually diminished, leaving only helpless sobs as her small frame shivered in the cold and fear, her eyes filled with terror and confusion regarding this cruel world. At that moment, the mercenaries stationed outside had been summoned to commit heinous acts, rendering the base's defenses utterly vulnerable. The lurking monsters, akin to sharks sensing blood, surged madly towards the base. Their roars intertwined with the screams of the people, plunging the entire base into chaos in an instant. The monsters burst into the small dark room, and the mercenaries who had been perpetrating violence were now stricken with fear, their faces turning pale as they abandoned Zwaluming and the others. Fleeing in terror, the colossal beast, its maw brimming with sharp fangs, lunged towards Zwaluming. She widened her eyes in terror, attempting to evade, only to find her body paralyzed by fear, just as the creature was about to sink its teeth into her. Bai Xiaozi, fueled by an unknown strength, lunged forward, pushing Zwaluming aside, but she was scratched on the arm by the monster's claws, blood instantly staining her clothes. Yao held Li Xiaoman tightly in a corner, despair flooding her heart as she surveyed the chaotic scene around them. She understood that they were confronting not only the darkness of humanity, but also a lethal threat from the monsters. And it seemed they had no hope of escape. The monsters rampaged through the base, leaving destruction in their wake. The women who had once supported the mercenaries now found themselves engulfed in fear. They gazed at the approaching monsters, realizing that their indifference and complicity had not spared them, but rather ensnared them in this horrific catastrophe. One woman was swept to the ground by a monster's tail. Her terrified cries for help drowned out by the frantic escape of those around her, none willing to extend a hand. Her eyes brimmed with fear and regret, yet it was all too late. Amidst the chaos and despair, Zhuo Luming, Bai Xiaozi, Su Yao, and Li Xiaoman huddled together, their gazes filled with terror and hopelessness, yet a flicker of survival burned within them. Supporting each other, they sought a glimmer of hope in this dire situation. However faint it may seem, Bai Xiaozi gritted her teeth against the pain in her arm and urged, "We cannot give up. We must find a way out." Zhuo Luming nodded vigorously, her eyes betraying a hint of determination. Su Yao wiped away her tears, holding Li Xiaoman close, declaring, "Yes, we will think of a way together." Li Xiaoman looked at her sisters, her heart heavy with fear, yet she nodded firmly. They groped through the darkness, searching for any possible escape. Suddenly, Zhuo Luming spotted a ventilation duct in the corner and excitedly exclaimed, "Look, there's a ventilation duct. Perhaps we can escape through there." A spark of hope ignited in their eyes as they cautiously approached the duct. Just as they neared it, a monstrous creature charged towards them. This beast, massive in size and covered in sharp spikes, bore glowing red eyes that exuded terror. Bai Xiaozi grabbed a wooden stick from the ground and dashed toward the monster, hoping to buy her friends some time. The creature, enraged by Bai Xiaozi's attack, turned and lunged at her. Bai Xiaozi evaded its strikes with agility, her face set in determination. Seizing the opportunity, Zhuo Luming, Su Yao, and Li Xiaoman sprinted towards the ventilation duct. They crawled into the narrow, dark space, filled with the musty scent of decay. Yet they paid no heed, pushing forward with all their might. Behind them, the roars of the monsters and Bai Xiaozi's shouts echoed, filling their hearts with dread. After what felt like an eternity of crawling, they finally glimpsed a faint light ahead. They quickened their pace, striving towards the source of illumination. Emerging from the duct, they found themselves in another corner of the base. Although there were still some monsters here, their numbers were relatively sparse. They cautiously evaded the creatures, making their way towards the exit. After overcoming numerous obstacles, Su Yao and her companions managed to escape in the same vehicle they had arrived in. Chapter 16. A dead end within the dimly lit, cramped room. The air was thick with a sense of malevolence and terror. The rotund man and several mercenaries wore grotesque, lecherous smiles, their hands roaming freely as they uttered vile words, violating the helpless women who resisted. The victims' cries and pleas intertwined, forming a lament of despair. Suddenly, a piercing, deafening roar erupted from outside the base, a sound that seemed to emanate from the depths of hell, laden with unending brutality and bloodshed. Following this cacophony were the hurried, chaotic footsteps and the thunderous sounds of objects being toppled. This sudden commotion froze the rotund man and the mercenaries in place. Their actions halted, their smiles vanishing, replaced by sheer terror and confusion. A glimmer of panic flashed in the rotund man's eyes as he slowly turned to look towards the source of the noise. At that moment, a colossal mutant crashed through the door, storming into the room like a black cannonball. This creature stood over 4 meters tall, its body covered in uneven black scales that glimmered coldly like metal, resembling an impenetrable suit of armor. Its massive, flattened head bore triangular eyes that blazed with a terrifying crimson light, akin to 2 flickering flames. Its mouth was filled with sharp fangs, each as thick as an adult's forearm, and a nauseating greenish-black slime dripped from between its teeth, sizzling upon contact with the ground, corroding it into small pits. The moment the rotund man beheld the creature, his face turned ashen, devoid of blood. His legs trembled uncontrollably, his knees knocking together as if he were a leaf caught in a tempest. His pupils dilated in horror, fear surging like a tidal wave, engulfing him entirely. What is happening? Where are the guards?" he stammered, his voice trembling with unprecedented dread and despair, as if an invisible hand had grasped his throat. Before he could recover from his overwhelming terror, the mutant swung its tree-trunk-like arm towards the nearest mercenary. The arm sliced through the air with a whooshing sound, swift as lightning. A sickening crack echoed, reminiscent of dry wood snapping, as the mercenary's body was sent flying like a discarded rag doll. His ribs shattered instantly, his chest caved in, and he crashed heavily against the wall, producing a dull, heart-stopping thud. Gradually, His body slid down, leaving a gruesome trail of blood smeared against the wall, reminiscent of a life extinguishing. The rotund man screamed in terror, his voice piercing the already oppressive atmosphere. He turned to flee from this nightmarish place, but his legs felt like jelly, utterly unresponsive. His feet scrambled across the floor in frantic desperation. Yet he could not move, as if nailed to the spot. The mutant seemed to sense his fear, a sinister smile creeping across its face, exuding a chilling aura reminiscent of a demon from hell. It advanced slowly towards the rotund man, each step causing the ground to tremble slightly, kicking up clouds of dust. Don't come any closer. Please, spare me, the rotund man pleaded incoherently, his voice laden with despair and terror. His hands flailed wildly in the air, as if he believed he could ward off the creature's approach. Unperturbed, the mutant extended its long, serpentine tongue, covered in barbs, wrapping it around one of the rotund man's legs. The man struggled desperately to free himself, his face contorted in anguish and fear. Yet the tongue tightened its grip, crushing his leg bone inch by inch, the searing pain eliciting screams akin to that of a slaughtered pig. His cries reverberated throughout the room, chilling the blood of all who heard, "Save me. Someone, please." The rotund man cried out to the other mercenaries, his voice cracking with sobs. Yet the mercenaries, consumed by their own peril, could scarcely attend to him. Another, slightly smaller but agile mutant burst into the room, weaving through the mercenaries with blinding speed. Its claws were razor-sharp, slicing through flesh with ease, leaving a trail of chaos in its wake. The mercenary screams echoed, transforming the room into a veritable hell on earth. One mercenary was impaled through the abdomen by the mutant's claws, his eyes wide with disbelief and profound agony. He grasped desperately at the claws, attempting to pull them free, but blood poured from his arms, quickly staining his hands and the ground. Exhaustion overtook him, and he gradually collapsed, the light fading from his eyes. The rotund man continued to struggle. But the mutant grew impatient. With a powerful flick of its head, it tossed the rotund man aside like refuse. The corpulent man traced an arc through the air, crashing heavily to the ground with a dull thud. His body bore multiple fractures, bones piercing through flesh, and blood gushed forth profusely. He writhed in agony on the ground, emitting faint groans. Those sounds grew weaker, akin to a flickering candle in the wind. On the verge of extinguishment, the mutant approached him again, slowly pressing its massive claw against his chest. The man felt as though a towering mountain was crushing his ribcage, rendering him breathless. Each inhalation felt like a tearing of his very being. His ribs cracked under the weight of the claw, producing sharp, resonant sounds. Blood continuously flowed from the corners of his mouth, staining his clothes and the ground beneath him. His eyes were filled with terror and despair. And in his final moments, he finally paid a grievous price for his malevolent deeds. His gaze gradually dimmed, and his body fell still, leaving behind a mangled corpse that bore witness to his past transgressions and his present fate. As his last scream faded into the air, the fat man and the band of mercenaries lay amidst a pool of blood, their bodies mutilated, surrounded by a scene of carnage. Those women who had once been violated by them were left in various states of shock. Some sat on the ground, eyes vacant, still unable to recover from the horror of the nightmare. Others stared blankly at the scene before them, their hearts awash with mixed emotions, uncertain whether to feel relief at the demise of these villains or sorrow for the brutality of this apocalyptic world. The fate that awaited the survivors was but a dead end. Chapter 17. Encounter. Thick darkness enveloped her, saturated with the scent of blood that invaded Li Yalin's nostrils as her shoes slipped in the puddles. Behind her came a sticky, slithering sound, reminiscent of countless suction cups gnawing at concrete. She dared not look back. The wound on her left shoulder oozed warm blood with each frantic stride. This was the 7th time she had encountered the same emergency exit sign. The labyrinthine corridor twisted grotesquely in her retina, and Li Yalin finally understood why the mutants hesitated to strike. They relished the process of their prey's collapse. The sweat-soaked tactical vest clung to her back, and a metallic taste surged in her throat as she staggered through the rooftop iron door. The cold wind, laced with icy particles, whipped against her face, and the abyss of 30 stories yawned beneath her feet. A sharp sound of scales scraping against metal echoed behind her as 5 blood-bat mutants emerged from the ventilation shaft, their bony wings aglow with an eerie blue luminescence. This was a breed she had never encountered before. Was this the end? Leaning against the rusted railing, Li Yalin reached for the small knife at her waist, but her fingertips brushed against the photograph tucked in her pocket. The edges of the picture had curled. Her sister's smile blurred into a pale shadow amidst the rain. The metal safety catch bit into her palm, and suddenly, she heard the sound of slicing air. A silvery flash cleaved through the rain. The first blood bat lunging at her was split in midair, its dark green fluid splattering onto the snow with a hissing sound. Li Yalin gazed at the familiar silhouette, her breath caught in her chest. The black trench coat billowed in the wind, revealing the crossed sheaths of dual blades at his waist. When he turned, the tear mole beneath his left eye flickered in the lightning. Luo Yinchen. Her voice caught in her trembling throat. Memories of tranquil times at school flooded back. That moment, Luo Yinchen's profile was illuminated by the cold blue lightning, the scar on his hand matching her recollection perfectly. The remaining blood bats emitted high-pitched shrieks, and Luo Yinchen twirled, his blade tracing crystalline arcs through the air. Duck! The long-awaited voice brushed past her eardrum, and Li Yalin instinctively bent down. The knife's wind swept over her head, pinning the attacking mutant against the concrete wall. Warm droplets of blood slid down her forehead, and she suddenly realized she was smiling, tears mingling with rainwater at the corners of her mouth, imparting a secret sweetness amidst the saltiness. Luo Yinchen pulled her back into the stairwell, and as the metal door locked behind them, a series of violent bangs echoed from the outside. The emergency lights flickered above, and Li Yalin counted the ice crystals clinging to his eyelashes in the eerie green glow. The fierce brows that had been so sharp during the battle were now lowered, as he used the torn hem of his shirt to bandage her shoulder wound. "You all right? That's wonderful." Just as she began to speak, he pressed her wrist down, the warmth of his palm seeping through her skin. "Don't speak." His lips barely moved, only a warm smile graced his face. It was then that Li Yalin realized Luo Yinchen's demeanor had transformed into that of a flirtatious youth. "Why, little princess has traveled a great distance to find me. You've truly suffered." Luo Yinchen removed the small knife from her, gently caressing her face. "Allow me to carve out a path for your highness. I shall forever be your strongest knight." While Li Yalin may not have favored his philandering nature, the sense of security he provided in critical moments was undeniably comforting. Luo Yinchen gently squeezed her hand before releasing it, gripping the small knife in reverse. He took a deep breath, adjusting his stance, and his aura shifted abruptly, transforming from gentle concern to resolute ferocity. With a resounding bang, Luo Yinchen kicked open the stairwell door, stepping into the rooftop rife with blood and danger. The 5 blood bat mutants, drawn by the sudden commotion, surged towards him with piercing shrieks that sliced through the night sky. Unfazed, Luo Yinchen moved with ghostly agility through the swarm of blood bats. The knife in his hand glinted with a chilling light under the flashes of lightning, each swing leaving a silver arc that sliced through the bat's flesh, splattering dark green fluid. One blood bat seized the opportunity and launched a surprise attack from behind, its bony spikes poised to strike. Yet Luo Yinchen seemed to possess eyes at the back of his head. He sidestepped with grace, deftly avoiding the attack, while simultaneously delivering a precise thrust that pierced the bat's skull, let out a chilling scream before crashing heavily to the ground. The remaining blood bats, witnessing this, escalated their assault. They encircled Luo Yinchen, attacking from all directions. However, he remained unperturbed, his gaze revealing unwavering determination and confidence, the knife in his hand moving as if it possessed a life of its own, deflecting and countering with seamless precision. Suddenly, one blood bat surged towards him at blinding speed. Luo Yinchen quickly crouched, evading the frontal assault and leveraging his position to thrust the knife upwards, directly piercing the bat's abdomen. The creature flapped helplessly in the air for a moment before its wings drooped lifelessly. Now only 2 blood bats remained. Sensing Luo Yinchen's formidable strength, they hesitated to attack recklessly, instead circling in the air, searching for a flaw. Luo Yinchen, however, remained patient, standing still and fixated on the bats, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Finally, one blood bat could contain itself no longer and charged forward. Luo Yinchen seized the opportunity, taking a quick step forward. As the bat was about to pounce, he leaped high, his knife carving a perfect arc that severed the bat's wing. Losing its balance, the bat plummeted to the ground. And before it could struggle to rise, Luo Yinchen was already at its side, delivering a fatal blow. The last bloodbat, filled with dread at the sight of its fallen comrades, turned to flee. But Luo Yinchen would not let it escape easily. He hurled the knife with force, and it struck the bat's back like a silver bolt of lightning. The bat emitted a despairing wail as it fell from the sky, crashing onto the rooftop and stirring up a cloud of dust. Standing amidst the corpses of mutants, rainwater washed away the blood and dark green fluid from Luo Yinchen's body. He slowly turned, gazing in the direction of the stairwell, a smile gracing his lips as he approached Li Yalan. Kneeling before her, he gently took her hand to help her rise from where she had collapsed. Like a knight protecting his princess, Luo Yinchen embraced Li Yalan tightly, shielding her from the suffocating sight of corpses outside, hoping she would regain her composure. Yet, in this desolate wasteland, apart from the two of them, only mutants remained. However, Luo Yinchen spotted a creature that resembled a human yet was distinctly monstrous. It emerged from the shadows of the ruins, towering and twisted, standing at least twice the height of an ordinary person. Its skin bore a bizarre gray-black hue, as if charred and subsequently gnawed by countless parasites, its surface riddled with countless lumps and fissures, from which dark green slime oozed, hissing as it dripped onto the ground. Its head was abnormally large, occupying a third of its upper body, bald on top, save for a few sparse strands of black hair resembling iron wire. Its face lacked discernible features, save for a single enormous vertical pupil that dominated its visage. The iris a murky blood red, exuding a bloodthirsty glint as it coldly surveyed its surroundings. Its limbs were robust and deformed, arms nearly dragging on the ground, fingers sharp as iron hooks, each as thick as a forearm, with curved, razor-sharp nails that glinted coldly in the moonlight. Its legs appeared to be constructed from twisted tree trunks, muscles tangled, each step resonating with heavy thuds that caused the ground to tremble slightly. As though proclaiming its absolute dominion, as the creature approached, a potent aura enveloped them, a stench mingling blood, rot, and an unknown foulness that made one feel nauseous. It radiated an invisible pressure, warping the very air, making it difficult to breathe. Luo Yinchen held Li Yalan tightly behind him, acutely aware of the immense pressure the creature exerted. Cold sweat trickled from the palms of Li Yalan. "Do not fear. I will ensure your escape before my strength wanes," Luo Yinchen reassured her. Glancing at the unwavering figure of Luo Yinchen beside her, his eyes revealed a steadfastness and determination, yet his words carried a hint of uncertainty. Chapter 18. Advanced Civilization ZD-017. Suddenly, Luo Yinchen spoke, his fingertips lightly tapping the hilt of his knife, producing a rhythmic, crisp sound, an echo of retro communication through subsonic resonance. The giant vertical pupils abruptly constricted into a diamond shape. Amidst the ruins, fragments of stone levitated, forming bizarre geometric patterns in the air. A vibration transcending human vocal cords erupted deep within the cranial cavity. "Observer sequence number correct. You truly are the most perfect experimental subject." Li Yalan felt warmth flooding her nostrils, as if her eardrums were pierced by steel needles. Luo Yinchen, maintaining an impassive demeanor, stepped protectively in front of her, the hem of his trench coat billowing without wind, distorting the subsonic waves into nothingness. "Experimental subject?" he scoffed, the tip of his knife pricking a half-congealed green blood clump on the ground, deriding the technological flaws that compressed a four-dimensional life form into a three-dimensional puppet. "How dare you claim to be an advanced civilization?" The suspended stones crashed to the ground. The grotesque surface of the monster writhed violently, and the snow within 10 meters instantaneously vaporized, revealing charred concrete beneath. Three clawed appendages pierced through Luo Yinchen's afterimage without warning, melting a 2-meter-wide glassy pit where he had once stood. "Careful!" Li Yalan's gasp caught in her throat. She saw Luo Yinchen appearing on the creature's shoulder, his small knife sparking brilliantly along the edge of the vertical pupil. This was no mere clash of metal and flesh, but rather the cutting of a high-density energy field. Cognitive limitations, the stones ascended once more, this time arranged in the shape of galactic spiral arms. "It is amusing how you interpret four-dimensional technology through two-dimensional text." Luo Yinchen deftly evaded a sweeping claw and, as he landed, suddenly hurled the tactical dagger into the air. In the moment that Li Yalan instinctively caught it, she noted the unusual temperature of the hilt. Some form of nanoscale fluorescent particles began seeping into her bloodstream. Above the ruins, the wind howled, and Luo Yinchen faced the colossal creature ZD-017. The surrounding debris swayed precariously in the aftermath of their battle, broken rebar jutting like snarling fangs towards the overcast sky. Inferior beings, your struggles are utterly futile in the face of absolute power. Your minuscule civilization is but a speck of dust in the cosmos, easily erased. ZD-017's oppressive voice resonated directly in the minds of Luo Yinchen and Li Yalan. Its immense vertical pupils flickered with a bizarre luminescence, the energy radiating from it distorting the surrounding air. Luo Yinchen's expression turned grim, his hair dancing wildly in the gale, his black trench coat flapping ominously. He gripped his small knife tightly, remnants of dark green blood still staining the blade. Standing out starkly in the dim light, hearing ZD-017's mockery, a flicker of disdain crossed his eyes, and a cold smirk curled his lips. You dare to confront me with your fists? You are hardly worthy of the title advanced civilization. If it were I would employ advanced technology to eliminate you from a distance. Infuriated by this provocation, ZD-017 scoffed, just an experimental subject. Its surface bulged and writhed violently, emitting a series of piercing, shrill sounds. Its three-clawed appendages lunged at Luo Yinchen like lightning, the speed tearing through the air with a sizzling sound. Luo Yinchen reacted swiftly, his form darting like a specter. The claws grazed the hem of his clothing, leaving deep ravines on the ground. Humph, a stubborn ant! ZD-017 roared, more claws extending from its contorted body like a thicket of black vines, launching a frenzied assault on Luo Yinchen. Navigating deftly between the claws, Luo Yinchen's small knife danced up and down, parrying wave after wave of attacks. Each clash of knife and claw sent sparks flying, illuminating the dim surroundings. Do you think your bravado can alter anything? ZD-017 taunted again. Before me, you are nothing but a lamb awaiting slaughter. With that, a powerful surge of energy erupted from within it, forming a colossal energy vortex centered on itself. The vortex was infused with sharp debris and distorted air, mercilessly drawing everything within its vicinity into a crushing oblivion. Luo Yinchen took a deep breath, feeling the surge of power within him. He knew this battle had reached a critical juncture. His eyes reflected resoluteness and determination as he gripped his knife tightly. Charging towards the oncoming energy vortex, as he neared the vortex, Luo Yinchen suddenly sidestepped, evading a lethal energy shock at an improbable angle. His figure shimmered in the light, like a black lightning bolt weaving through the vortex. Continuously seeking ZD-017's weaknesses, his knife was poised for a lethal strike. You think this is enough to trap me? Luo Yinchen bellowed, his voice brimming with confidence and grandeur. He summoned every ounce of strength within him, executing a fierce series of knife techniques amidst the vortex. The blade flashed like silvery moons, dissipating the surrounding energy impacts one by one. As ZD-017 witnessed this, it became increasingly frenzied in its attacks. Its claws relentlessly lunged at Luo Yinchen, while the energy vortex spun ever faster. Yet, Luo Yinchen showed no fear. With his agile movements and exquisite knife skills, he'd repeatedly turned peril into safety. As ZD-017 sensed Luo Yinchen closing in, it raised a hand and directly amplified the gravitational pull. Luo Yinchen, Li Yalan, and everything around them were suddenly pressed to the ground by an overwhelming force, unable to rise. Despicable creature, resorting to underhanded tactics. Luo Yinchen cursed vehemently. ZD-017 paid no heed to his invectives. In your human eyes, I may indeed appear repulsive, but that's only natural. Isn't it what you fear? Under the immense gravitational pressure, Luo Yinchen and Li Yalan were pinned to the ground, every muscle straining against the overwhelming weight, as if they were about to be crushed. Luo Yinchen gritted his teeth, veins bulging on his forehead. Though he cursed in anger, his body remained immobile, forced to watch as ZD-017's twisted form taunted him. Humph! You think you can resist? ZD-017's icy voice echoed in his mind. The experiment continues. I hope you do not perish before it concludes. With that, the energy fluctuations emanating from it gradually diminished, accompanied by a chilling sound of writhing. It slowly turned, retreating into the depths of the ruins, swiftly vanishing into the oppressive darkness. ZD-017 departed. The powerful gravitational force slowly dissipated. Li Yalan struggled to raise her body, feeling as though all her bones were dislocated. A profound ache coursing through her. Ignoring her pain, she quickly turned to Luo Yinchen beside her. She found him with his eyes tightly shut, his face pale as a sheet, a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. Evidently having exhausted his strength in the earlier battle and slipped into unconsciousness. Yinchen, Yinchen, Li Yalan called out anxiously, a hint of tears in her voice. She gently shook Luo Yinchen's body, trying to rouse him. But he showed no response. Panic-stricken, she realized the danger surrounding them. They could not linger here and must quickly escape with Luo Yinchen. Taking a deep breath, she suppressed her fatigue and pain, laboriously hoisting Luo Yinchen onto her back. Allowing his arm to rest on her shoulder. His body was heavy, yet Li Yalan hesitated not for a moment, gritting her teeth and stepping forward, inching towards safety. The wind howled relentlessly, slicing through her like a knife. The debris around her swayed precariously, threatening to collapse at any moment. Li Yalan navigated carefully, dodging falling bricks and sharp rebar, each step a monumental struggle. Her legs felt as though they were leaden. Yet her heart was driven by a singular conviction. She must take Luo Yinchen away from this place. After an indeterminate duration, Li Yalan finally spotted an abandoned warehouse. Summoning her last vestige of strength, she bore Luo Yinchen inside and gently laid him down on the floor. The warehouse was permeated with a musty odor, but at that moment, it represented their safest refuge. Chapter 19. Diverging Fates. Exhausted, Li Yalan sat beside Luo Yinchen, gazing at his pallid face, tears spilling uncontrollably. She tenderly caressed his cheek, silently praying for his swift recovery. Subsequently, she began to meticulously examine his injuries, noting multiple abrasions and bruises on his body. With several wounds oozing blood, Li Yalan paid no heed to her own fatigue, hurriedly searching the warehouse for materials to bandage his wounds. Eventually, she discovered some tattered clothing and a piece of clean fabric in a corner. She carefully wiped Luo Yinchen's wounds with the cloth and then bandaged them with the old garments. After completing this task, Li Yalan collapsed to the ground, utterly spent. Yet her eyes remained fixed on Luo Yinchen. Time passed slowly, and Luo Yinchen remained in a deep coma. Li Yalan kept vigil by his side, unable to close her eyes for even a moment. She was uncertain what dangers lay ahead. But she knew that if Luo Yinchen did not awaken soon, remaining there meant certain death. Quietly, Li Yalan sat beside Luo Yinchen, the wind outside howling like the cries of countless mutated beings. Assaulting her fragile nerves, her gaze fell vacantly upon the warehouse's weathered walls, her thoughts drifting back to their days in school. Luo Yinchen, do you remember? Li Yalan whispered softly, her voice echoing ethereally in the vastness of the warehouse. In those moments, we strolled along the ginkgo avenue of our school, the golden leaves carpeting the ground, rustling beneath our feet. Sunlight filtered through the gaps in the branches, warming our skin. We would discuss our favorite books, sharing our dreams, carefree and oblivious, as if the world would forever remain a beautiful place. A bittersweet smile graced her lips, yet tears clouded her eyes once more. The campus we once cherished was a bastion of laughter, now transformed into a desolate wasteland ravaged by mutants. Humanity had lost its former dominance, reduced to lambs awaiting slaughter, struggling to survive in this barren land. Back then, we believed the future was long, filled with countless possibilities awaiting us. A tremor of emotion tinged Li Yalan's voice. Who could have predicted that in merely a few days, everything would change? The city lay in ruins, friends and family scattered amidst the calamity. Danger and despair lurking everywhere. She turned to the still unconscious Luo Yinchen, gently grasping his hand, as if drawing strength from his presence. Luo Yinchen, please wake up. I'm truly frightened without you by my side. I cannot bear to imagine what would happen if you... She dared not complete the thought, her heart heavy with fear and hopelessness. Recalling their previous escape experiences, every near encounter with the mutants felt like a dance with death. Those grotesque creatures possessed strength and speed beyond comprehension, rendering humanity small and fragile in their presence. We ran desperately, ceaselessly searching for safety, but where could true safety be found? Tears fell from Li Yalan onto Luo Yinchen's hand. How she longed for this to be merely a nightmare, hoping to awaken and return to school, to those ordinary yet beautiful days. She understood that in this wasteland, memories were a luxury and a torment. Yet in this moment, she found herself ensnared in reminiscence, for only those cherished pasts could offer her a flicker of warmth in this endless darkness. Once, we fretted over exam results, fretted over trivial conflicts with classmates. Now, reflecting on those moments, how utterly inconsequential they seemed, Ella Yalin's voice grew softer. As long as we can survive, as long as you awaken, I would pay any price. Time dragged on in agonizing torment. Yet Luo Yinchen showed no signs of awakening. Ella Yalin's body was already weary, but her spirit remained taut. She dared not relax for a moment, ever vigilant of the sounds beyond the warehouse. Luo Yinchen, every time I see you unconscious, I tremble with fear, Ella Yalin silently prayed, recalling the myriad dangers they had faced together. They had come so far, they could not abandon hope here, yet she felt utterly powerless. Reliant on him to escape peril, barely able to wield a weapon. She gazed at the dim sky outside the warehouse, her heart a mixture of nostalgia for the past and uncertainty for the future. But in this moment, her sole unwavering conviction was to stand guard by Luo Yinchen's side, awaiting his awakening, ready to confront the unknown dangers and challenges together. Even if the road ahead was fraught with thorns and hope seemed distant, she would never surrender, for in this despairing world, Luo Yinchen was her entire motivation to endure. Suddenly, a sound akin to nails scraping against the tin roof sent chills racing down Li Yalin's spine. It was no mere whisper of the wind. Something was slowly crawling atop the ceiling, the sound of viscous liquid dripping rhythmically against her temple. Don't wake up. Please don't wake up now. She pressed her palm tightly against Luo Yinchen's mouth, cold sweat soaking his cracked lips. The stench fermented in the confined space, and by the moonlight, she could see shadows in the ventilation ducts being gradually obscured by some multi-segmented appendage. The ceiling emitted a cacophony of dislocated bones, as if 10 people were simultaneously twisting their necks. When the first drop of rancid yellow liquid penetrated the rusted ceiling and splattered onto Luo Yinchen's forehead, Li Yalin's nails dug deep into her thigh. She hunched over, dragging the unconscious Luo Yinchen, the sound of her worn soles scraping against the concrete resonating like thunder in her ears. The moment she slipped into the shadow of the oil tank, the entire wall of corrugated steel suddenly dented inward, revealing 6 glistening ordinary mutants numbered 150,000, while the intelligent species amounted to 300,000. The tip of a steel pipe scraped against the concrete floor, sparking a shower of embers that was merely a prelude. His voice, laced with the sweetness of honey yet tinged with poison, resonated as the soles of his boots crushed the scattered remnants of flesh. Dark golden veins creeping up his neck towards his ear. The sparks from the bursting oil tank flickered ominously behind them, and Li Yalin's back had long been drenched in cold sweat. Wait! Her words were abruptly severed by the foul wind that surged closer. 3 mutated beings encircled her from different directions, their decayed claws mere inches from her throat. A flash of silver erupted. Luo Yinchen's figure darted forward like a bolt of lightning, and Li Yalin was only left to hear the sickening crack of bones breaking. The man, his back turned towards her, flicked his short blade, droplets of blood tracing crimson arcs beneath the moonlight. 900,000, it's been noted. Are you insane? Li Yalin finally regained her voice, her clenched fist slick with clammy sweat. Where are we supposed to? Her words faltered abruptly. Luo Yinchen had somehow drawn near to her ear, his fingertip brushing against the wound on her neck, dark golden veins swirling along her blood vessels. Shu, his breath, tinged with a smile, caressed her trembling lashes. Your blood is speaking, isn't there still this? He lightly tapped the pendant hidden beneath her collar, a token of their affection he had personally bestowed upon her earlier. But wasn't this a gift from you? Li Yalin clutched the pendant tightly, reluctant to part with it. Upon hearing her words, a jolt of electricity surged through Luo Yinchen's mind, the previously vague memories controlled by other personas suddenly crystallizing into clarity. He comprehended in an instant that it was his other personas, before his own emergence, who had committed these acts. A flicker of imperceptible emotion crossed his gaze, swiftly replaced by an icy demeanor. In that moment, to him, he was simply himself, and the transaction was merely a transaction. His own rules could not be transgressed. I care not for who gifted it. Now it is my remuneration. Luo Yinchen's voice was low and frigid as he extended his hand, unyieldingly seizing the pendant from Li Yalin's grasp in his palm. The pendant emitted a faint glow, as if whispering of past tenderness and beauty, yet now, All had become a mere shadow of what once was. Li Yalin's eyes brimmed with tears, her heart heavy with sorrow. This pendant represented not merely an ornament, but the embodiment of her bond with Luo Yinchen. She bit her lip, filled with anger and grievance. Yet faced with the unfamiliar yet formidable Luo Yinchen, she found herself at a loss for words. Luo Yinchen tucked the pendant into his bosom, inhaled deeply, and his aura abruptly transformed. The already formidable power surged forth like a tempestuous tide. His gaze flickered with a chilling light, reminiscent of a messenger from the depths of hell, instilling fear in all who beheld it. Now that the transaction is complete, I shall fulfill my promise and escort you from this place. Luo Yinchen's words were laced with coldness, and as soon as he finished speaking, he charged forth like a streak of black lightning towards the still-stirring mutants. His movements were as swift as a bullet, each strike infused with immense power and precise accuracy. The mutants before him resembled fragile ants, easily crushed in a flash. He appeared before one mutant, raising his fist and obliterating its head. Black blood splattered, leaving a gruesome mark upon the ground. Li Yalin stood rooted in place, watching Luo Yinchen navigate through the throng of mutants, a tumult of emotions swirling within her. She understood that Luo Yinchen possessed two personas. But what was happening now? Was the gentle, considerate man she once knew truly the same as this emotionless killing machine before her? Memories of his tenderness and care flooded her mind. Under the relentless onslaught of Luo Yinchen, the mutants were gradually eradicated. Those once fearsome monsters now lay in heaps of debris upon the ground. After vanquishing the last mutant, Luo Yinchen turned and strode towards Li Yalin, his form drenched in mutant blood, exuding an aura that was chilling to the bone. "Let us depart," Luo Yinchen stated flatly, devoid of any emotion. Li Yalin silently followed him, both moving towards the direction of the survivor base. Throughout their journey, Luo Yinchen maintained a heightened vigilance, ever prepared for potential dangers, while Li Yalin was lost in thought, reflecting on Luo Yinchen's transformation and their uncertain future. Upon finally reaching the survivor base, the sight before them left them dumbstruck. The gate stood ajar, thick with the scent of smoke and fire. Entering the base revealed a scene of utter devastation. Buildings collapsed, belongings strewn about haphazardly, corpses littered the ground. Some human, yet none of the mutants. Blood stained the earth, a gruesome sight to behold. "What has happened here?" Li Yalin gasped in horror, covering her mouth, her voice trembling. Luo Yinchen's expression turned grave as he meticulously surveyed the surroundings, searching for clues. He knelt to examine the bodies, discerning that these individuals had seemingly perished in a violent confrontation in a matter of moments. "It appears this place has endured a brutal battle." Rising to his feet, his brow furrowed, he added, "And it is not safe here." Miss Li, regarding the next transaction, at that moment, Luo Yinchen suddenly felt a violent wave of dizziness, his body swaying dangerously close to collapse. Witnessing this, Li Yalin instinctively reached out to support him, yet recalled his earlier indifference, retracting her hand mid-motion. "This body is truly troublesome. I ought to exercise more." Luo Yinchen gritted his teeth, aware that his time for rest was once again upon him. His consciousness began to fade, and he collapsed to the ground, falling into a deep slumber. The base fell into an eerie silence, with only the sound of Li Yalin's breathing echoing through the still air. Their future loomed before them, much like the desolate ruins surrounding them, shrouded in uncertainty. Finally, Li Yalin retrieved the pendant from Luo Yinchen's unconscious form, murmuring an apology. Chapter 21. The lost Li Yalin gazed at the unconscious Luo Yinchen, a tumult of emotions swirling within her. She gently placed him in a relatively concealed and secure corner, her fingers instinctively brushing against his cheek, the familiar contours now imbued with an alien chill. "What has happened to you?" she murmured, her voice rife with concern and confusion. Taking a deep breath, Li Yalin rose, gripping the steel pipe stained with the filth of the mutants, cautiously stepping forward to explore the ruins of the survivor base. The air was thick with the acrid scent of blood, each step taken with utmost care, fearful of stirring unknown dangers lurking in the shadows. "Is anyone there?" she ventured to call out, her voice reverberating through the desolate base. Met only with silence. The only response was the mournful wails of the wind as it swept through the broken walls, echoing the cries of the departed souls. She entered a room that appeared to have once been a storage facility, cluttered with various items, and spotted several cold, lifeless bodies scattered about. Suppressing her fear and sorrow, Li Yalan crouched down to inspect the scene, hoping to uncover clues regarding this calamity. Suddenly, she noticed one corpse clutching a photograph tightly in its hand. The image depicted a blissful family, their smiles radiant, now forever separated by the veil of death. How could this happen? Li Yalan's eyes welled with tears once more, her heart swelling with sympathy for these innocent victims and rage at the disaster that had befallen them. Pressing onward, she arrived at the medical area, which was equally in disarray, medications strewn across the ground, medical equipment reduced to rubble. Was there a formidable foe that attacked this place? Yet, the mutants should not have left such a trail. Li Yalan murmured to herself, attempting to piece together the truth amid the chaos. Just then, she heard a faint sound, as if someone were softly weeping. Instantly, Li Yalan's senses heightened, her grip tightening on the steel pipe as she cautiously approached the source of the sound. In a corner partially concealed by a collapsed wall, she discovered a trembling little girl. "Don't not be afraid. I mean you no harm," Li Yalan endeavored to soften her voice, slowly lowering herself to the child's level. "What is your name? What happened here?" The little girl lifted her tear-streaked face, gazing at her with terror, hesitating for a moment before whispering. I am Nini. They came out of nowhere, so powerful, no one could fight back." "Who came?" "Nini, can you explain more clearly?" Li Yalan pressed urgently. It was a group of strange people. They glowed, and with a wave of their hands, they could knock someone down. Nini's voice quivered, still engulfed in overwhelming fear. A chill ran down Li Yalan's spine at the mention of glowing strangers. What could they possibly be? Before she could inquire further, a cacophony erupted outside, as if something were rapidly approaching. "Nini, stay quiet. We must hide." Li Yalan quickly pulled the little girl behind her, her gaze fixed on the doorway, the steel pipe trembling slightly in her grasp, whether from anxiety or anger. The clamor drew nearer, and Li Yalan's heart raced, clutching Nini protectively, her knuckles whitening from the strain. Just as she was on the verge of charging out without a second thought, several figures appeared in the doorway. Leading them was a tall man, his face etched with weariness and caution. Upon seeing Li Yalan and Nini, he paused momentarily, then raised a hand, signaling his companions to halt. "Do not be alarmed. We are not your enemies." The man's voice was deep and steady, tinged with fatigue. Li Yalan, unwavering in her vigilance, cast her gaze over the individuals before her. Although their garments were tattered, she discerned no signs of mutation, which allowed her to exhale with a modicum of relief. Though the steel pipe in her grasp remained firmly clenched. "Who are you? How did you come to be here? Are you not afraid of the mutants?" she inquired, her voice betraying a slight tremor. A woman with a ponytail stepped forward from behind the man, a friendly smile gracing her face as she endeavored to ease the tension. "We are survivors scavenging for supplies in the wilderness. Upon hearing commotion in this area, we came to investigate. Naturally, we have our means of evading the mutants. But are you all right?" Her gaze fell upon Nini, brimming with compassion. Li Yalan hesitated for a moment, gradually lowering the steel pipe while maintaining her guard. "We are fine. This place was once a survivor's base, but now..." Her voice trailed off, heavy with sorrow and confusion. At that moment, a bespectacled young man squeezed through the group. His curiosity piqued as he surveyed the surroundings. "What happened here? How could it have come to this?" Li Yalan succinctly relayed her observations and the information gleaned from the young girl, Nini. The group listened in stunned silence. "Glowing mutants? That sounds utterly bizarre." The ponytailed woman furrowed her brow, her eyes clouded with concern. The tall man pondered for a moment before speaking. "Regardless, we should vacate this place. It is far too perilous. And we do not know what further dangers may arise." Li Yalan felt a flicker of doubt as she glanced back in the direction of Luo Yinchen, her heart torn. "I have a companion. He is injured and unconscious. I cannot leave him behind." The man followed her gaze, seemingly understanding her plight. "We will help you carry him. Strength in numbers will afford us safety on the journey." Gratitude welled in Li Yalan's heart as she nodded. With the group's assistance, they located the unconscious Luo Yinchen and carefully lifted him. "Let us find a safe haven to regroup and devise a plan," the man suggested, leading the way out of the base. Li Yalan, cradling Nini, fell into step amidst the throng, her heart a tumult of emotions. She remained uncertain of what awaited them, yet at this moment, she was no longer alone in facing the unknown terror. Li Yalan held Nini close. They traversed the group. The towering man, Lei Zhan, suddenly halted, signaling with his calloused palm. His chiseled profile appeared sculpted in the moonlight. His gray-blue irises narrowing. Silence, he commanded in a hushed tone, revealing the jagged scar on his neck as he swallowed hard. The ponytailed woman, Su Wan, instinctively gripped her katana, her tattered garments brushing against shards of glass scattered across the ground. Her cat's-eye stone earrings glimmering in the darkness. Chen Mo, the bespectacled youth, stumbled toward a crumbling wall, his eyes widening in horror. These scratch marks, they were left by metallic claws. His trembling fingers traced the wall. His innate fastidiousness compelling him to wipe the lenses of his glasses with alcohol-soaked cotton. Li Yalan bore the weight of Luo Yinchen on her back, the burden heavy, but she persevered. Just as the group absorbed Chen Mo's alarming discovery, a chilling growl reverberated from the end of the street. The sound resembled a beast's roar, intermingled with an eerie high-pitched vibration that sent shockwaves through their eardrums. Lei Zhan's complexion paled, and he swiftly drew the hunting rifle strapped to his waist, his voice urgent yet subdued. "Prepare for battle. It's a mutant." Su Wan's grip on her katana tightened, veins prominent on the back of her hand. While her gaze radiated determination, Chen Mo's face turned ashen, fumbling in his backpack for a makeshift stun gun, his fingers quivering with anxiety. Li Yalan's heart raced, instinctively clutching Nini tighter. The weight of Luo Yinchen felt like a mountain upon her back. "What do we do?" Her voice quivered with despair as she cast a pleading glance at her companions. The mutant slowly emerged, towering and grotesque, emanating a ghostly green luminescence, resembling a demon from the depths of hell. Its limbs elongated unnaturally, sharp metallic claws sparking against the ground, each step causing the earth to tremble. "Run!" Lei Zhan shouted, pivoting and sprinting in a different direction. The group, like startled prey, fled in a desperate panic. Li Yalan, burdened by Luo Yinchen, struggled to keep pace, gradually falling behind. "Li Yalan, hurry!" Su Wan called back, concern etched across her face. Gritting her teeth, Li Yalan felt sweat soaking her back, her legs heavy as if shackled by iron. I can't go on," she gasped, on the verge of collapsing. At that moment, the mutant lunged forward like a lightning bolt, targeting Li Yalan. She widened her eyes in terror, instinctively shutting them, awaiting the arrival of death. Suddenly, a muffled grunt echoed from behind her, and Li Yalan felt a sudden lightness as Luo Yinchen fell from her back. In shock, she turned to see him, unbeknownst to her, having shielded her from the fatal blow. Blood gushed from his shoulder, and his complexion turned ashen. "Luo Yinchen!" Li Yalan screamed, instinctively rushing forward. "Don't!" Lei Zhan grasped her arm, urgency etched in his features. "You'd only be signing your own death warrant." But tears streamed down Li Yalan's face as anguish and inner turmoil filled her eyes. "We cannot abandon him. If we do, we will all perish." Su Wan sprinted back, desperately tugging at Li Yalan's arm, her voice tinged with sobs. Li Yalan gazed at Luo Yinchen, whose eyes reflected a semblance of relief. As if urging her not to look back. "No," she cried out in despair, yet her body was forcibly dragged forward by her companions. The cunning mutant did not pursue but remained stationary, emitting a series of eerie chuckles. Mocking their cowardice and helplessness, Li Yalan ran. She cast glances back until Luo Yinchen's figure faded into the darkness. Her heart shattered into countless fragments. "Is this it? Has he truly vanished?" she fretted inwardly, tears blurring her vision. Finally, they eluded the mutant's pursuit, finding refuge in a derelict building. Li Yalan collapsed onto the ground, her cries echoing in despair. Nini clung tightly to her, her small frame trembling uncontrollably. "I'm sorry." Lei Zhan approached her, lowering his head, guilt filling his eyes. "We had no choice. He's gone. He's truly gone." Li Yalan lifted her tear-streaked face, her eyes void of hope. "If he is dead, what meaning does my survival hold?" The group fell into silence, the atmosphere stifling. They understood Li Yalan's words rang true, yet the mutant's overwhelming strength made rescue seem insurmountable. If it weren't for him buying us time, perhaps we wouldn't have escaped. Aside from Li Yalan's sobs, the others remained mute. Chapter 22. Encounter with the mermaid. Luo Yinchen awoke to a clammy sensation enveloping him. He struggled to pry open his eyelids. The first sight to greet him was clusters of ethereal blue spores cascading from the cave ceiling. Though the penetrating wound on his shoulder still throbbed, The pain had subsided, replaced by an odd slickness, translucent gel slowly writhing within his injury. Experimental subject, are you awake? A chilling female voice resonated with an uncanny echo, reminiscent of a whale's song from the depths of the ocean. On a stone platform entwined with luminescent vines, a mermaid-like mutant loomed above him. Her silver-white hair flowed like moonlight, adorned with coral-like antlers, while her lower half was covered in scaly blue skin leading to a tail bristling with bone spurs. She raised her web claws. Luo Yinchen observed the gel seeping into his wound from her fingertips. Is this paradise? Am I truly witnessing a mermaid? His voice emerged as a harsh whisper. From the depths of the cave, a cacophony of low growls resonated, and dozens of crimson eyes flickered in the shadows. Yet they dared not approach the stone platform. The mermaid mutant's pupils suddenly narrowed into slits as her scaled face inched closer, allowing Luo Yinchen to glimpse the emerald liquid coursing through her veins. Her gill-like structures pulsated rapidly, and a noise akin to electronic interference erupted within his skull. By your human standards, our civilization could indeed be deemed your paradise. A searing agony enveloped his entire being without warning. Luo Yinchen's body seemed to possess its own will, fervently attempting to mend the wound. He felt as though engulfed in flames, the peculiar sensation of regeneration sending tingles across his scalp, struggling to wriggle free from the inexplicable force. He found his body unresponsive. This sensation is truly tormenting. Luo Yinchen gasped, fear and discomfort lacing his voice. His gaze fixated on the mermaid mutant before him. At that moment, he perceived the surreal creature as increasingly bizarre. Unmoved, the mermaid mutant continued to observe him with her icy slit pupils, her expression devoid of emotion, as if scrutinizing an unfeeling experiment. Her hand gently brushed against Luo Yinchen's chest, the slick texture causing him to shudder. Instinctively wanting to recoil, yet an invisible force held him captive. "Do not move." The mermaid mutant finally spoke, her tone remaining cold, imbued with a sense of mystery and pressure unique to the deep sea. Her hand gently pressed against the wound of Luo Yinchen, and those gel-like substances seemed to respond to some unseen command, swirling rapidly around the injury. Luo Yinchen's face flushed crimson, beads of sweat rolling down his forehead. "How can you torment someone like this?" he exclaimed, a wave of itchiness overwhelming him, making it impossible to suppress his cries. The mermaid mutant frowned slightly, a flicker of barely perceptible confusion crossing her gaze, as if she could not comprehend why Luo Yinchen was so agitated. "Subject, I am examining your injuries to ascertain whether they have fully healed." Her voice remained calm, devoid of any emotional fluctuation, as if this were the most ordinary of tasks. "Examining injuries?" Luo Yinchen scoffed. "But don't you find this thing incredibly itchy when placed on a wound?" His body trembled slightly from the itch, yearning to scratch but refraining from touching the wound, feeling an immense sense of humiliation in that moment. The mermaid mutant ignored Luo Yinchen's protest, her hands continuing to traverse his body, meticulously inspecting each injury. "The human body is truly fragile," she murmured softly, a hint of disdain evident in her eyes. In fact, wounds heal on their own. Could you please remove this thing? It's unbearable," he shouted, his voice echoing through the cavern. The mermaid mutant's gaze instantly turned frigid, her hand pressing down forcefully, pinning Luo Yinchen to the stone platform. "Do not move, or I cannot guarantee that your wound will not reopen." Her voice carried a threat of menace, her icy stare sending shivers down Luo Yinchen's spine. Gritting his teeth, he found the itch far more unbearable than the pain. He had never imagined being so wantonly manipulated by such a creature. "Is there a swarm of insects crawling on me?" he gritted out through clenched teeth. The mermaid mutant's hands finally stilled, straightening up to look down upon Luo Yinchen. "Your injuries have nearly healed," she stated flatly, her expression devoid of emotion. Luo Yinchen's inquiry caught in his throat. Suddenly, the mermaid mutant leaned in, her coral-like appendages brushing against his collarbone, cool strands of hair cascading down, releasing delicate luminescent spores. As he realized that her pearlescent lips were about to make contact with his wound, his pupils dilated in alarm. Wait, what are you?" The moist sensation silenced all words. Unlike the slickness of the gel, the mermaid's tongue bore minute barbs, yet it was unexpectedly exhilarating. The irritating mucus seemed to come alive, surging wildly as if responding to her swallowing. Luo Yinchen's back arched instinctively, his nails scraping against the stone platform with a piercing sound. Note he bit his lip, his throat constricting. The skin that had been licked became oddly numb and itchy, as if countless jellyfish were simultaneously releasing their stinging cells. A faint sound of flesh, regrowing, emanated from deep within the wound. A pleasure far more intolerable than pain coursing up his spine to the back of his head. The mermaid mutant's gill membranes suddenly flared open, revealing bioluminescent gill filaments within. Luo Yinchen realized that the healing of his wound was synchronizing with her breathing rhythm. Each time those translucent gill leaves brushed against the side of his neck, newly formed capillaries blossomed beneath his skin, creating a coral-like network. Is this what you call healing? He gazed at the raw fish flesh that had been spat out onto the ground, then cast a glance at the bewildered ZD-001. Suddenly, an idea struck him. Is there a way for you to make this fish less raw, perhaps by igniting a fire within you? ZD-001 pondered for a moment, then reached out to take the raw fish flesh, only to stuff it into her mouth before pulling it out again. Now transformed into cooked fish, Luo Yinchen beheld the piece of glistening, saliva-coated cooked fish in ZD-001's hand. A wave of embarrassment washed over him, his face alternating between pale and flushed, his features contorting in a mix of confusion and distress. I felt as though something was lodged in his throat. He wanted to voice his objections, yet no words would come forth, leaving him to merely open his mouth in vain, emitting a series of meaningless sounds. This is covered in your saliva." His voice trembled with resistance, his eyes brimming with repulsion as he instinctively recoiled, raising his hands defensively before his mouth. ZD-001, however, appeared utterly perplexed, tilting her head as her cold, slit-like pupils reflected no hint of understanding, as if she could not fathom why Luo Yinchen was so averse. "If it can be eaten, what is the problem?" Her tone remained monotonous, as if this were merely a trivial matter. Luo Yinchen, exasperated, felt his face heat up as he flailed his arms in an attempt to clarify. "How could this be acceptable? We humans do not consume anything that has been tainted by another's saliva. It is simply unsanitary." His eyes were filled with earnestness, hoping ZD-001 would grasp his meaning. Yet, ZD-001 remained unmoved, her brow furrowing slightly as a flicker of impatience crossed her gaze. "You humans have so many rules," she remarked coldly, taking a sudden step forward with a speed that left Luo Yinchen no time to react. Just as he opened his mouth to protest again, ZD-001 deftly shoved the saliva-laden, cooked fish into his mouth, quickly covering his lips with her webbed claw, her grip unyielding and authoritative. "Eat it. Do not waste it." ZD-001's voice was deep and frigid, tinged with an undeniable command. Luo Yinchen's eyes widened in terror and anger, struggling desperately as he pried at ZD-001's hand, but her seemingly delicate webbed claw was as strong as iron. Refusing to yield, a muffled sound escaped his throat as he attempted to expel the fish, but ZD-001's grip held firm, forcing him to swallow it down reluctantly at last. When she released her hold, Luo Yinchen broke into a fit of coughing, his face flushed crimson, tears welling in his eyes. How could you do this?" he bellowed in fury, his voice hoarse from coughing. ZD-001 merely regarded him silently, her expression devoid of any emotion, as if the entire incident had no bearing on her. "Once eaten, you will not be hungry. You humans are truly difficult to please," she remarked blandly before turning to glide toward the far side of the cave. Leaving Luo Yinchen to sit alone upon the stone platform, he steadied himself against the damp cave wall and stepped outside. The morning light broke through the pale violet methane clouds, casting iridescent reflections upon the surface of the liquid methane sea. He squinted against the brightness, only to suddenly spot ZD-001 hovering 3 meters above the water, her silver-blue hair gently swaying with the methane waves. Sunlight streamed through her translucent ear fins, illuminating the delicate network of blood vessels in a coral hue. Her waist, adorned with pearlescent scales, shimmered just beneath the water's surface, the hexagonal scales flickering with each breath as if embedded with miniature prisms. As Luo Yinchen approached the edge of the reef, he noticed the deep blue crystal embedded in her chest pulsing rhythmically, akin to a miniature star igniting beneath the sea. "Do you humans always gaze at others' energy cores?" ZD-001 suddenly turned, her her tail fins splashing a series of glowing droplets of methane. Her voice resonated with a liquid metallic timbre, and between her lips, 2 rows of crystalline teeth were vaguely visible. Luo Yinchen realized he had nearly reached the brink of the reef, and as he hastily stepped back, he slipped on some seaweed. Just before the back of his head could collide with the rocks, a warm surge of energy cradled him from behind. ZD-001's webbed claw hovered just 3 centimeters from his neck, its fingertips extending golden strands of energy. "Be careful," she instructed, retracting her claw, causing the energy strands to dissipate like stardust. "Your human skeleton is far too fragile." As she spoke, the membranes of her gill flaps fluttered rapidly, the scales at her neck shimmering with rippling blue light. Luo Yinchen pushed himself up from the reef. Noticing a bioluminescent slime on his palm, it then dawned on him that ZD-001's skin was perpetually shrouded in a mist-like bioluminescence. Every time the waves brushed against her elongated silver tail, ephemeral geometric patterns of light lingered in the AI. "Is this photosynthesis?" he ventured, reaching out to touch the luminous patterns, warmth instantly radiating from his fingertips. "Even more efficient," ZD-001 remarked, swirling a mass of methane liquid with her tail tip. The liquid spiraling in her palm and vaporizing into an energy vortex. "I directly transform each scale into a miniature reactor, capable of direct conversion." She abruptly paused, her vertical pupils narrowing into fine slits. "You wouldn't understand even if I explained." Gently, ZD-001 tousled Luo Yinchen's disheveled hair. "Human, we must leave." "Where to?" ZD-001 herself was uncertain, only aware that remaining in one place was decidedly unsafe. "I do not know." "Human, follow quickly." Oh, Luo Yinchen had no choice but to scamper after her. Chapter 24. The Lovelorn Mermaid and the Human named Nai. The silver-blue figure suddenly halted before a half-collapsed Walmart sign. ZD-001's ear fins oscillating like radar. Her fingertips, adorned with bioluminescent seaweed, curiously prodded at a rusted shopping cart. The metallic frame emitted an excruciating squeak, startling a few 3-winged radiation pigeons. "Is this iron cage used by you humans to corral food?" ZD-001 inquired, her hair brushing against Luo Yinchen's nose as she turned. Rubbing his itchy nose, Luo Yinchen took a step back. "This is called a shopping cart." Before he could finish, he noticed the mutant mermaid had already climbed into the cart, her pearlescent scales glowing softly in the dim supermarket. She curled her long legs and tilted her head back, resembling a curious seal in an aquarium. "So you want to put yourselves inside?" ZD-001 exclaimed, nodding in sudden realization, the luminescent glands at the edges of her ear fins flickering erratically. "No wonder so much energy is needed, and the need to eat." Without warning, she reached out and lifted Luo Yinchen by the waist, depositing him into another shopping cart amidst his terrified protests. The cracked tiled floor suddenly illuminated with specks of blue light. Her tail fin was discharging bioelectric currents. The rusted metal axles began to creak and groan. Carrying the pair toward the depths of the darkened shelves, Luo Yinchen gripped the edge of the cart tightly, watching countless outdated chip bags was passed overhead. "Wait. This will as the shopping cart collided with a collapsed shelf. ZD-001 nimbly leaped atop the cart. The membranes on her webbed claws suddenly inflated into translucent air sacs, deflecting the cans that came crashing down. A can of aged sardines and tomato sauce rolled to Luo Yinchen's feet, the metallic surface adorned with a heart-shaped dent. "Your food storage methods are quite fascinating, though this has been our practice for centuries," she remarked, picking up the can and gently squeezing it, the hard metal yielding like liquid under her fingertips. "This is how you open it, right?" She proceeded to mold the molten metal into an exquisite little sculpture, tilting her head as she presented it to Luo Yinchen. The young man gazed at the still warm metallic heart. Letting out a long sigh, "Could you please pull me out first? I seem to be stuck." "Human, you are quite rude, yet I shall assist you." ZD-001's hands, slick with slime, made it difficult for Luo Yinchen to grasp. With great effort, he finally extricated himself. "You were holding too tightly," ZD-001 remarked, shaking her hands. "Your grip was too loose. It just slipped away." After leaving the supermarket, Luo Yinchen and ZD-001 continued to wander through the debris-laden streets. The sun struggled to pierce through the thick clouds, casting its rays upon the crumbling ruins. ZD-001 frolicked like a jubilant fawn, inspecting this and that, until her eyes lit up, pointing toward a half-collapsed Ferris wheel in the distance. "What is that? A Ferris wheel?" Luo Yinchen replied, glancing in the direction she pointed. "You don't know. It was something people often rode when they went out for fun." ZD-001 blinked her large, watery eyes, curiously asking, "Fun? Is it like how we are playing together now?" Luo Yinchen frowned slightly, scratching his head. "Have I been following you all this time, and you've just been playing?" ZD-001 grasped Luo Yinchen's hand, slowly leading him toward the Ferris wheel. "Human, you have no choice in this matter. Following me is the right thing to do." Upon reaching the base of the Ferris wheel, Luo Yinchen exerted considerable effort to pry open one of the relatively intact cabins. Once inside, ZD-001 looked around, her azure hair swaying within the confined space. "Your hair can change color? Human, this is called optics." The Ferris wheel began to turn slowly, and as they ascended, the outlines of the abandoned city came into view. "Why does the Ferris wheel still have power? Humanity, a higher civilization beyond your comprehension." ZD-001 pressed her face against the dust-laden glass, her eyes shimmering with light. Luo Yinchen observed her innocent demeanor, a smile involuntarily curling at the corners of his mouth. "What is this? Is she not merely a little girl?" Suddenly, a gust of wind swept through, causing the Ferris wheel to creak ominously as it gradually came to a halt. ZD-001 exhibited no fear. Instead, she seemed a bit exhilarated. "Oh, I like this game," Luo Yinchen chuckled helplessly, "but I am afraid. However, it seems we may have to wait a while before we can move again." As he spoke, he retrieved a piece of chocolate from his pocket and offered it to ZD-001. "Here, try this." ZD-001 accepted the chocolate, inspecting it curiously. "What is this? Can I eat it?" Luo Yinchen nodded. "Of course, it's quite delicious." "Humph, human food." ZD-001 cautiously took a bite, her eyes widening in surprise. "This flavor is quite extraordinary, but I feel as though I have tasted it before." She took another large bite, chocolate smudging at the corners of her mouth like a greedy little kitten. Luo Yinchen couldn't help but reach out to wipe the chocolate from her lips. ZD-001, unfazed, once again brought the chocolate to Luo Yinchen's lips. "Human, you are quite bold, but you should eat too." The chocolate was smeared with her saliva, which Luo Yinchen immediately recognized as the healing substance for his wounds. Perhaps it would be best to decline. ZD-001 retracted the chocolate, her expression slightly pouting. Luo Yinchen smiled awkwardly. After all, it was he who had given her the chocolate. As night descended, the dim sky was completely engulfed by darkness. A day of wandering had left both Luo Yinchen and ZD-001 feeling fatigued, and they sought refuge in a relatively sheltered corner of an abandoned building. The chill in the ruins was bone-chilling. Luo Yinchen hugged his arms tightly, shivering uncontrollably, his teeth beginning to chatter. ZD-001, sitting nearby, initially gazed around curiously, but upon seeing Luo Yinchen's distress, her expression shifted to one of concern. "Human, why are you trembling so?" She blinked her large eyes, filled with confusion and a hint of worry. Luo Yinchen sniffled, his nose reddened from the cold, stammering. "It is too cold at night. I doubt I can't bear it." ZD-001 tilted her head in thought for a moment, then suddenly leaned closer to Luo Yinchen, pulling him into her embrace without hesitation. Luo Yinchen was taken aback by this sudden action. His body instinctively wanted to resist, but as he struggled, ZD-001 tightened her hold. "Don't move, human. I will keep you warm." She frowned, speaking with an air of authority, as though issuing an undeniable command. It was then that Luo Yinchen realized ZD-001's body radiated warmth like a furnace, dispelling much of the cold as he drew nearer. Yet, before he could fully relish this warmth, he sensed something amiss. ZD-001's slime had transferred onto his clothes, sticky and quite uncomfortable. "The slime on you." Luo Yinchen awkwardly began, attempting to alert her. ZD-001 glanced down innocently. "This is for protecting the body. What could possibly be the issue?" As she spoke, she nuzzled closer to Luo Yinchen like a playful little creature, further smearing his clothes with the viscous substance. Luo Yinchen chuckled helplessly, just as he intended to push her away. A stronger gust of cold wind howled past, causing him to shiver. The refusal he had prepared died on his lips. He sighed resignedly, accepting this sweet burden. In the cramped corner, their positions were somewhat awkward. Luo Yinchen endeavored to maintain his balance, fearful of inadvertently crushing ZD-001, while ZD-001, like a child with a new toy, occasionally shifted, adjusting their positions, each movement spreading the slime further across Luo Yinchen. Could you possibly refrain from being so overly affectionate? Luo Yinchen remarked with a wry smile, his face a portrait of exasperation. ZD-001, however, blinked her large, glistening eyes at him with feigned innocence. I am keeping you warm. Humans are just too particular. As she spoke, she reached out to touch Luo Yinchen's face, leaving a glistening trail of slime from her hand upon his cheek. Luo Yinchen was amused by her innocent appearance, the awkwardness in his heart gradually dissipating. He gazed at ZD-001, his eyes brimming with tenderness. This slime can be washed off, right? As time passed, Luo Yinchen gradually acclimated to the slime on his body, and in ZD-001's warm embrace, drowsiness began to envelop him. His eyelids grew heavy, and eventually, he drifted into a hazy slumber. ZD-001 watched over the sleeping Luo Yinchen, a gentle smile gracing her lips. She carefully adjusted her position to ensure he was more comfortable, quietly guarding him as if protecting the most precious treasure in the world. In this desolate night, surrounded by ruins, two beings from disparate worlds nestled together in a peculiar yet warm embrace, warding off the chill of the outside world. Chapter 25. The choice as dawn broke, the remnants of last night's chill lingered over the ruins, a thin veil of mist shrouding the surroundings, adding an air of mystery to the dilapidated world. Suddenly, a faint sound of footsteps disrupted the silence, and a figure slowly emerged from the fog. None other than ZD-018. Its once twisted form appeared particularly terrifying in the dim light. Limbs bending at unnatural angles, sharp claws etching lines into the ground. Its eyes glimmered with an eerie green light, fixated intently on the slumbering Luo Yinchen, a sinister smile creeping across its wrinkled face, rendering it even more grotesque. Luo Yinchen, sensing danger in his dreams, furrowed his brow slightly, shifting restlessly. Upon fully awakening and realizing ZD-018 stood before him, his eyes widened in terror, his face reflecting sheer panic as he instinctively recoiled, attempting to distance himself from the horrific creature. Just then, something peculiar unfolded. ZD-018's body began to contort and reshape, its protruding joints retracting, sharp claws shrinking gradually, and the rough scales on its skin slowly peeling away. Replaced by smoother skin, in no time, it transformed from a chilling aberration into a humanoid form that, while still not entirely human, was no longer frightening. Human, would this appearance be more pleasing to you? ZD-001, upon noticing ZD-018's arrival, displayed a dismissive expression, waving her webbed hand in greeting. 018, you've come. This greeting startled Luo Yinchen from his lingering fear. Still shaken, he gazed at the transformed ZD-018, then at the disdainful ZD-001, stammering, What is happening? Why is it here? And why has it changed like this? ZD-001 blinked her large, watery eyes, explaining with innocent simplicity, Human, this is ZD-018, the one who brought you to me before. It merely changed its appearance. She affectionately ruffled Luo Yinchen's hair, adding, Human, your hair is quite messy. ZD-018 nodded slightly, its voice low and gravelly. Do not be afraid, Human, I brought you here because you are important to us. Although its tone remained rough, it was a marked improvement over its previous beast-like growl. Luo Yinchen swallowed hard, striving to calm his emotions, yet confusion clouded his face. Important to you? I am merely an ordinary human. What use could I possibly be? ZD-018's lips curled slightly. Human, while you may resemble Earth's creatures, you are also a significant subject for our experiments. This planet is precisely your experimental ground. Luo Yinchen struggled to comprehend these words, his anger boiling over. You've killed so many. Even if it's an experiment, it cannot be so inhumane. ZD-018 smiled faintly. Human, do you care about the lives of mice and monkeys when conducting experiments? I recall humans have performed numerous experiments on animals, and some even on other humans. This statement left Luo Yinchen speechless, as the history of human technological advancement is indeed built upon the backs of living beings. War, biology, chemistry. ZD 018's words rendered Luo Yinchen silent, his face etched with frustration and indignation. Yet he found himself at a loss for a rebuttal. He bit his lower lip, his hands unconsciously clenching into fists. Veins bulging on the back of his hands, his body trembling slightly with rage. ZD 001, observing his demeanor, instinctively reached out to soothe him, her hand brushing against his head in a silent gesture of comfort. Yet once again, her slime adhered to Luo Yinchen's hair, further entangling his already unruly locks. Luo Yinchen noticed the odd sensation in his hair, his brow furrowing deeper, but at that moment, his heart was heavy with sorrow for his predicament and the fate of humanity. Leaving him indifferent to the triviality of the slime. Seeing Luo Yinchen's silence, ZD 018 inclined its head slightly, rasping. I have matters to attend to. 001, take care of him. ZD 001 responded with a gentle nod. Watching as ZD 018 turned away, their figure gradually dissolving into the mist. Once ZD 018 had departed, ZD 001 took hold of Luo Yinchen's hand, attempting to help him rise. Yet, Luo Yinchen seemed drained of strength, his steps unsteady, and his gaze filled with despondency. Observing this, ZD 001 squatted down, patting her shoulder to signal Luo Yinchen to climb on her back, offering to carry him. After a moment's hesitation, he acquiesced and settled onto her back. ZD 001 ambled through the desolate cityscape. Remnants of crumbling walls surrounded them, with a few resilient weeds daring to sprout through the cracks in the rubble. Shivering in the cold wind, throughout their journey, ZD 001 frequently glanced back at Luo Yinchen, her eyes brimming with concern, while he buried his face in her shoulder, remaining silent. Suddenly, a cacophony echoed from ahead. Both ZD 001 and Luo Yinchen turned towards the source of the noise, spotting a group of desperate humans huddled together, their ragged clothing and gaunt faces betraying their exhaustion and vigilance. Upon noticing ZD 001 and Luo Yinchen, the group instantly tensed. A burly man stepped forward, tightly gripping a makeshift weapon, and shouted, "Danger! A mutant? And there's a human with it." Upon hearing the exclamation, Luo Yinchen abruptly lifted his head, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. Struggling to dismount from ZD 001, he took a few steps forward, his voice trembling with excitement. "Please, don't attack. I am human too. At last, I have found you." The group eyed Luo Yinchen with suspicion, glancing at ZD 001 behind him. A frail woman cautiously inquired, "How can you be with that creature? And how is it that she hasn't harmed you?" Luo Yinchen waved his hands in urgency, his expression desperate as he explained, "No, it's not like that. She may be a mutant, but she has not harmed me. She has taken care of me." As he spoke, his eyes glistened with emotion, his voice choked with feeling. ZD 001 tilted her head, observing the humans with curiosity. She stepped forward, attempting to greet them, but her movement sent the group retreating in fear. Their grip on their weapons tightening. "Oh, not be afraid. She will not harm you," Luo Yinchen interjected, positioning himself protectively in front of ZD 001, his gaze earnest. "That I owe my survival to her care." A murmur rippled through the crowd, expressions of anger etched on their faces. "Luo Yinchen?" A familiar voice shattered the tense atmosphere. Emerging from the throng was Li Yalan, her face a picture of joy and disbelief. Upon seeing Luo Yinchen, she rushed forward, enveloping him in a tight embrace, exclaiming, "Thank goodness! You are alive! You are alive!" Meanwhile, ZD 001 stood back, watching in bewilderment. Li Yalan's tears soaked Luo Yinchen's shoulder as her fingers gripped his back tightly. Luo Yinchen hesitantly raised a trembling hand, patting her back lightly, but his gaze drifted over her frail shoulders to see Lei Zhan's gun adjusting its aim in response to ZD 001's movements. "What is that slime on you?" Li Yalan suddenly released him, her swollen eyes filled with confusion. She took a step back, her fingers still clutching the sleeve of Luo Yinchen's shirt. This subtle withdrawal pierced Luo Yinchen's heart, prompting him to glance back at ZD 001. The mutant girl was tilting her head, observing the crowd, her neck adorned with scales that glimmered with an eerie blue light as they pulsed with her breath. A viscous liquid dripped from her outstretched fingers onto the rubble below, emitting a faint corrosive sound. "Step back," Lei Jun bellowed, the metallic sound of his weapon's bolt action startling the crows perched atop the ruins. Su Wan's katana sliced through the air, the blade poised mere inches from ZD-001's throat. This creature, usually adorned with an innocent smile, now had pupils narrowed into slits, her once dull nails sharpening at a visible rate. "Stop!" Luo Yinchen stumbled forward, positioning himself between them, his back colliding with the cold steel of the blade. He felt Su Wan's muscles tense as she restrained her strength, the sound of the blade tearing through his coat resonating painfully in the silence. Chen Mo extracted a device resembling a thermometer from his backpack, his eyes widening in alarm as he exclaimed, "The energy readings are 20 times higher than the last mutant we encountered. This is no ordinary mutant. Kid, get out of the way." Lei Zhan's finger hovered over the trigger, the veins on his hand bulging ominously, his voice chillingly calm. "You must understand, when we found old Zhou last month, half of his body was dissolved in the mutant's digestive fluids." Luo Yinchen spread his arms wide, beads of sweat trickling down his neck. He saw ZD-001 mimicking a human's deep breath. Her chest, adorned with tiny scales, rising and falling violently, the newly emerged bony spikes retracting slowly until they returned to a harmless curvature. "During my days of wandering outside, it was her warmth that kept me alive," he declared, his voice taut like a string stretched to its limit. "She poses no threat, I assure you." Su Wan's blade trembled imperceptibly. Suddenly, Li Yalan rushed forward, gripping his arm tightly. "Have you been mentally compromised? How can a human be with a mutant? They wanted to kill you. Humans, they are afraid. I believe we must leave," ZD-001 interjected, her voice resonating with a sound reminiscent of a damp wind instrument. She attempted to smile, but the forced expression caused her facial scales to misalign, rendering her even more terrifying. "Humans, we must depart." "Wait. Please, hold on." Luo Yinchen urgently turned to grasp her raised hand, noticing the pale bone of her wrist oozing a faint purple liquid. This instinctive action caused Lei Zhan's gun to drop several inches, the bullet grazing ZD-001's foot and exploding, sending shards of rock slicing against her calf. "Kid, it is impossible for us to coexist with the mutant. It's either us or her." Lei Zhan's eyes radiated resolve. "Luo Yinchen," Li Yalan pleaded from the sidelines, "please, come with us. Being with a mutant is far too perilous." Faced with this dilemma, Luo Yinchen was torn between the familiarity of his schoolmate and the mutant who had cared for him. He began, bending to retrieve a stone dislodged by the bullet, summoning great courage to voice his decision. "I'm sorry, Li Yalan, but I must repay her kindness first." ZD-001 emitted a short, perplexed hum. Her habitual response to confusion. "Repay?" When Luo Yinchen took her sticky hand in his, her usually cold fingers trembled violently, as though grasping a searing iron. Chen Mo suddenly raised a recorder towards them. Intrigued, how fascinating. Is this the love between a human and a mutant? "Shut up." Lei Zhan's roar shattered the last remnants of hesitation. Luo Yinchen cast one final glance at the weeping Li Yalan. Pulling ZD-001 into the fog-laden ruins, behind them, the soft sound of Su Wan sheathing her sword and Li Yalan's tearful questions echoed. "Why? Luo Yinchen, why? I searched for you with great difficulty." "We shall meet again." Li Yalan wished to follow but recoiled in fear of the mutant. Meanwhile, from above, ZD-018 observed the scene unfold, reflecting, "Humans, it is fortunate you did not make the wrong choice. Otherwise, none would have survived." Chapter 26. Special weapon. The mist flowed through the skeletal remains of concrete and steel, resembling a river devoid of warmth. Luo Yinchen's shoes crunched over shards of glass, the sharp sound startling the mutated cockroaches hiding in the crevices. These purplish-red armored creatures quivered, their antennae twitching, scuttling away in panic as ZD-001 lifted her foot. "Human, your heartbeat is rapid." ZD-001 suddenly paused, her gill-like appendages unfurling slightly, releasing a faint pink mist. As she turned, a sweet, metallic breeze brushed past Luo Yinchen, several silvery strands clinging to her fragmented hair sweeping across his face. Luo Yinchen stepped back, his back colliding with a rusted fire hydrant. He gazed at the face before him, caught between humanity and monstrosity. those delicate scales glimmering in the morning light, translucently fragile, as if they might dissolve at any moment. I merely that he tightened his grip on a pendant in his pocket. I am contemplating how to repay you. Repay? ZD-001 tilted her head, her fingers unconsciously twisting the viscous liquid on her arm. The pale purple substance dripping from her slender fingertips, corroding the asphalt beneath. Her mimicry of a human smile revealed pearlescent fangs, glistening with an otherworldly sheen. 018 stated that my duty is to care for you and ensure your safety. Why is there a need for repayment? A distant screech from mutated vultures echoed, and Luo Yinchen abruptly grasped her retracting claws. The retracting bony spikes grazed his palm, blood dripping onto ZD-001's scaled hand. Sizzling softly. But for me, it is not merely a task. His voice rang clear through the empty streets. You could have let me freeze to death or killed me from the start. There was no need for this. ZD-001's pupils dilated into slits, akin to a startled feline. She jerked her hand back, exclaiming, "Human, how did you injure your hand?" Luo Yinchen regarded his bloodied hand with indifference. "Human, this slime can heal wounds." She spoke while gently licking the wound on her hand, and under the influence of the viscous substance, the injury swiftly healed. In truth, there was no need to concern oneself over such a minor injury. I had ample slime of my own. Humans, that slime serves to keep you warm and heal wounds, and it resides within my mouth. Is that so? Luo Yinchen chuckled lightly, finding it quite peculiar. The damp breeze stirred the flyers at the entrance of the convenience store. The yellowed paper still adorned with cartoonish designs from the summer festival, a festival of yore, one that would never return. Only then did Luo Yinchen realize something was amiss. How strange! Why had I not encountered any infected beings attacking me over the past few days? ZD-001 patted its chest, proclaiming, "Human, I told you, it's safe to follow me. Is that so? You've been protecting me all along, yet I don't even know your name." Name? ZD-001 pondered for a moment. "You may simply call me 001. Why a number? Human, numbers are the universal language of the cosmos." Luo Yinchen smiled wryly, acknowledging the truth in its words. The sand was torn apart by a sharp alarm as ZD-001 crouched among the ruins of the convenience store, searching for something intriguing. Suddenly, the fan-like gills on the back of its neck flared open, and fingers smeared with ketchup clamped down on Luo Yinchen's wrist. 12 red laser sights converged upon the two of them. Human, danger. Its eyes transformed into slits, and pale purple slime dripped down its spine, eroding the concrete floor into winding grooves. From behind a distant concrete shelter came the sound of metal clashing, as over 20 armed women surrounded them in a fan formation. Luo Yinchen noted that a blood-red rose was embroidered on the bulletproof vests of the women, and the short-haired leader, sporting a mechanical right eye, emitted a piercing buzz as the blue light swept past her. A male! She curled her lips into a cold smirk, suddenly shifting her gun's aim to ZD-001. And an infected being. Non-target human. ZD-001's vocal cords emitted a high-frequency tremor, causing the surrounding glass to shatter. It positioned itself in front of Luo Yinchen, scales spreading from its neck to its cheekbones. "Human, hide behind me!" The crowd erupted into chaos. The women exchanged glances, the sound of clashing firearms mingled with suppressed gasps. The mechanical eye of the short-haired woman flickered incessantly, ultimately fixing its gaze on Luo Yinchen. A human actually mingling with an infected being. Indeed, this is a disgrace. Suddenly, she raised her gun and fired at ZD-001. That infected being looks weak. It can be killed. Can be killed. In Luo Yinchen's memory, firearms were ineffective against infected beings. Could it be? With the crack of a gunshot, Luo Yinchen snapped back to reality, finding ZD-001 rendered immobile. 001. Luo Yinchen urgently assessed the situation, discovering that the bullet had penetrated 001's armor and embedded itself deep within its flesh. Now, Luo Yinchen understood why they walked so boldly on the streets. They possessed weapons capable of combating infected beings. ZD-001 reassured the anxious Luo Yinchen, "Human, I am unharmed. Quickly, hide behind me." 001 frantically secreted slime to treat the bullet wound, the projectile gradually being pushed out. The short-haired woman was taken aback, but quickly regained her composure. "An infected being that can self-repair? Keep firing." As the gunfire erupted amidst the ruins, 7 blood blossoms burst forth from ZD-001's back. Luo Yinchen saw the crescent-shaped scale beneath its collarbone torn away. Bits of flesh mixed with purple slime splattering onto his trembling eyelashes. Human, do not move. Its vocal cords rasped as if worn down by sandpaper. The fingers of its left hand had already morphed into a shield-like form, while the slime trailing from its right arm faded from deep purple to a ghastly white. The short-haired woman blew away the gunpowder smoke, her boot crushing the half-melted bullet casings on the ground, those lead cores embedded with peculiar fragments. Luo Yinchen's fingertips sank into its shattered scales, his palms slick with cold slime. 001. Your gills, he gazed in horror as the respiratory organs on the back of its neck shriveled, the once pink gill membranes turning a dull brown. More bullets pierced the cracks in the shield, and ZD-001 suddenly pressed its forehead against his brow. Beneath the peeling scales, human skin was revealed, akin to a cicada shedding its shell. Human, my slime has healing properties. Its pupils expanded into a murky glassy hue, the corners of its mouth curling into a strained arc. Hiding behind me is safe, and wait a moment. Only then did Luo Yinchen realize he was crying. Tears fell onto the crystalline slime on the back of his hand, evaporating into a faint purple mist. The short-haired woman began to reload, preparing for a second shot, and Luo Yinchen stepped in front of ZD-001. Wait, why shoot us without cause? The short-haired woman initially scoffed at his words, then lit a cigarette. Infected beings deserve to die. During the apocalypse, you only think of women, and those who consort with infected beings deserve death. Laughter erupted, and Luo Yinchen felt like a comical fool at that moment. Human, hide behind me. 001, regaining a semblance of consciousness, pulled Luo Yinchen into its embrace, hoping to shield him from the bullets. Fire! As another round of gunfire rang out. Specially made bullets struck 001, just as it had claimed, effectively protecting Luo Yinchen. 001. With the second wave of shots, 001's fleeting awareness vanished once more, and the short-haired woman's bullets ran out. Difficult to kill. Even with specialized weapons? This is the first time I've encountered a self-repairing infected being. The short-haired woman began to load her third magazine. Luo Yinchen sensed the urgency. At this rate, 001 would not endure. Seizing the moment while she was reloading, he bravely attempted something. Let's give it a try. He slowly leaned in to kiss 001 as if she were an ordinary human girl, as their lips neared. A surge of slime flooded into his mouth, reminiscent of saliva. Human, what are you doing? 001, regaining a hint of awareness, asked in confusion. When Luo Yinchen opened his eyes, he felt transformed, a hint of charisma radiating from him. 001, thank you for your protection. Although you are an infected being, I wouldn't mind marrying you both. Luo Yinchen's voice carried a magnetic, bubbly tone. The residue of the slime on his tongue held a refreshing mint flavor. While his veins felt as though they were being filled with liquid nitrogen, he observed droplets of blood suspended from 001's eyelashes. The short-haired woman's pull of the trigger slowed to a 24-frame sequence. There was a bit too much slime, but no matter. He twirled the metal rod, creating silvery arcs, the sound of bullets striking metal resonating into a prolonged buzz. The surface of the rod shimmered like mother of pearl, and the specialized bullets vaporized into purple mist upon contact. What? As the women recoiled in astonishment, Luo Yinchen's white shirt billowed in the gusts. Kneeling, he witnessed 001's shattered scales regrowing, refracting rainbows in the morning light. Ladies, he raised his gaze, the corners of his eyes tinged with luminescent slime, his voice resonating with the echoes of underground pipes. It does not conform to gentlemanly etiquette for ladies to be tainted with the scent of gunpowder. Seizing the opportunity, Luo Yinchen lifted 001 and leaped onto the collapsed billboard, the rebar wrapped in slime yielding like soil. Hold tight, 001. Remember to thank me with a kiss when we look back. He ducked his head against the howling wind, cradling 001 as if she were a bouquet of flowers. Human, you've suddenly become quite strange, speaking such odd words. Her breath, tinged with the scent of rust, brushed over his rolling Adam's apple, and your heart is racing faster than a frightened mouse. Luo Yinchen covered 001's mouth. This isn't my fault. You made my heart race. How annoying. 001.001 wore a blank expression, resembling an innocent girl. You are still quite strange, human. The women contemplated pursuing, But the short-haired woman halted them as they ran off. Forget it. Let us return to base. Observing from the shadows, 018 saw they had ceased their pursuit and withdrew.